The Stadium Heads, ACC Stadium Heads episode on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 100 times the amount of money you enter with Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Sign up today with the promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash with that promo code TCESGPN. That's UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCESGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Yes, get the best data drive props and picks from Rhythm. That's RITHMM. Claim your free 7-day trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm.
Hey, what's up, you degenerate gamblers? This is Bill Burr, and you're listening to SGPN. Let it ride, baby.
Okay, they can be done in any case, education. More education and more informed. That's the way it is in everything. The young ones, they ask me advice, and I always tell them, get as much knowledge as you can.
Stadium Heads, man.
The granddaddy of them all, the famed Rose Bowl, jammed with a color of over 100,000 fans for its 67th renewal.
And the weather here today at Notre Dame Stadium, in a word, it is cold, but it is football weather. The temperature 37 degrees, humidity 79%. Forecast cloudy for light rain later on this afternoon.
The average person doesn't know what a good stadium is. They might think they know what a good stadium is, but they think just, oh, our seats are nice and it's so comfortable. We have a 10,000-inch screen we can watch the replay on while we're watching the game, and we got a waiter coming over to take our orders, right? And there's 20 million bathrooms close to us. That's not what makes a good stadium. A good stadium is the look of it, the feel of it, the history of it, the soul of it. That's what makes a good stadium. That's what I mean when I say we're stadium heads. We are stadium heads.
They get to run around. Now those people, they shouldn't even be there. That doesn't even count. If you can't get out in the elements, you shouldn't even go to the game. That's the worst thing. Those darn boxes up there, and dome stadiums and stuff. We don't need that, right?
Welcome to sunny El Paso, the 52nd Sun Bowl, and now
this ancient facility is one of the great settings in all of college football. Neyland is now in its 87th year.
That's what we are, though. We are stadium heads. Yes, and welcome back to the Stadium Heads ACC edition. I know we weren't with you last week because of Memorial Day, and I was also in a wedding on the East Coast, but I'm excited to talk ACC stadiums with you. If you're wondering just who the hell you're listening to, well, my name is Colby Swinging Database Dan, a.k.a. Pick Dundee. That's not a pick. This is a pick.
He was raised in the land down under, where a man thinks on his feet, speaks with his fists, and lives by his wits.
When Dundee happened, he was a superstar.
Nobody knows nothing. Somebody knows. Double the price, but no one touches Dundee.
And there's a brand new ACC. All right, we're that much closer. I feel like after Memorial Day, you're closer to college football. We started our team previews on the college football experience, all 134. But go check those out. Solo episode for every team in the land. But the ACC, it's 17 teams now, kind of 17 and a half, depending on how you look at it. But it's a new day and age. We're going to talk about all 17 stadiums today and educate you about, why college football is the greatest thing that's ever hit planet Earth, perhaps. I am joined by my co-host, who's the real heart behind the Stadium Heads podcast, if I may say so, because he's been to every damn stadium in the FBS. He's been to a bunch in the FCS, and he travels around nonstop. If you're not familiar, you need to get familiar. And I have another video that can also introduce him better from a bowl game that happened this past December, if memory serves me correct. But, let's just go straight to that.
They wanted to shout out Michael Barker. You can follow him on Twitter at CFB Campus Tour. This is his 84th college football game of the 2023 season. He said he's going to end at 90 college football games he's attended this year with the college football national title in Houston. So, again, he's out there with everybody.
He's like
wet
US
weather.
Postal Service. Rain, sleet, snow, it doesn't.
Getting it done. That is Michael Barker, the most interesting man in college football. How you doing, brother, man? And it's good to be back that much closer talking college football and ACC stadiums with you, man.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad we could work in that intro video. We talked about that screenshot 2 weeks ago, and my phone blew up when I'm on ESPN in the rain during that Military Bowl last year. But this is an exciting episode to me. I feel like that the first 2 episodes that we did of stadiums with SEC and Big Ten, I feel like 90% of them are just pure classics, and you're just going to be in awe of those. The newly configured ACC, I feel like there's some things that are going to trigger stadium heads. Some of them have to do with playing in NFL stadium. Some of them have to do with being named after a bank or a credit union. Some of them have to do with being their capacity and being in a power conference. So there are some great stadiums in the ACC, but it's an interesting mix the way that they've built this 17-team conference now.
Yeah, and me going through them, and we're about to play some slides, and I would highly encourage people, if you're gonna look, this is a great from the audio standpoint. You learn things, but if you got the time, YouTube.com/@StadiumHeadsSGPN, subscribe, tell a friend, because the visual presentation that I was working with the slides on this, and you're right, you get to some where I say, but there's some gems also within this conference. We're going to get to it all, folks. But before we do that, I want to tell the fine people out there that you're listening to this is the Stadium Heads podcast, part of SGPN Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Look, the NBA Finals tip off this week, and make sure you subscribe to the NBA Gambling Podcast for all your free NBA picks and entertainment. So hop on over there and check out the NBA Gambling Podcast. All right, we are back on the Stadium Heads, and look, 17 teams in the ACC. Before I dive into every single one of these, and by the way, we're going to go alphabetically. We did have some good news in the past 2 weeks, essentially, or past 10 days or something, of a lot of college football games being announced from a national TV standpoint. We got dates, times. We're still waiting on a lot of other ones, but I mean, I was disappointed. I'd be lying to you if I told you otherwise. Now, it was exciting, the Big Ten going to a bunch of Friday night games, which came out, I feel like May 28th or something. But I was looking forward to Texas A&M being back on Thanksgiving, or at least Black Friday. That didn't happen as far as we know right now. And another thing that happened within the mighty SEC was the Egg Bowl will not be on Thanksgiving. Michael, for years you've been telling me you got your Thanksgiving plans. What the hell happened here, and what was your reaction to all this news?
Yeah, they're messing with it. I mean, we talked about this before, and there's certain things that are tradition, and the Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving is where I want to spend, give it to Mississippi. Allow them to have it. Detroit Lions had NFL Thanksgiving football forever, and they were terrible. And people said, get them off, mix up the teams, and they stuck with it. And look how good Detroit is now. The Cowboys had a lot of bad, embarrassing games, and they stuck with them. The Egg Bowl it's not perfect. It's not Alabama, Georgia. We don't want it to be Alabama, Georgia. We want to have it there because it's an important game and because it's been going on for so long. There is a note that was released that the SEC is going to move more games. In about 2 weeks, they're going to make announcements. So possibly we're going to get that Texas A&M game on Thanksgiving. We don't know, but it's frustrating because you think certain things, you have them pigeonholed, and then somebody comes and makes a decision and they're gone. So I'm grateful for the Egg Bowls that I've got to spend in Oxford and Starkville. Hopefully this is a blip. Hopefully, I mean, let's just be selfish. Hopefully the ratings are terrible and they put it back on Thanksgiving. But we'll Amen. I learn a lot in this off season, which is you want to be done and have all the information, and it just keeps coming. So, we need FCS kick times. We need to see if they're going to put any on-campus games the Sunday of week 1, because right now it's just neutral site games. Are they going to put a Thursday night game week 2 up against the NFL opener? There's a lot of things that are out there that are still in question. So, but we know that the Egg Bowl is not going to be on Thanksgiving, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, right now it seems like your Thanksgiving. Now, I mean, the Egg Bowl is way better than this game, but I will say New Orleans is a beautiful city to visit anytime. But Memphis at Tulane is the only game scheduled right now for Thanksgiving, and there's there's one FCS game, right?
Yeah, so the Turkey Day Classic, it's actually the 100th Turkey Day Classic. It's an HBCU game. It's Tuskegee versus Alabama State. And Alabama State's one of the best FCS stadiums in the country. You know, we did the FCS stadium poll a few weeks ago, and it was the number 4 seed there. So, you know, I went to Tulane in 2022 for the AAC championship. They beat UCF. They rushed the field. You know, I try to think of, can I top that? And I don't know if I can top that. I went to one game at Bama State. It was COVID year in the spring, and there was probably 1,000 people there. So having the 100th Turkey Day Classic and maybe the only other game on, if the things stand that way, I'm probably going to be in Montgomery.
I mean, that seems like a decent game. Now, I just hope it's not too much of a blowout. It could be a big blowout with Tuskegee, but because Alabama State, I think, is going to be decent this year. And subscribe to the FCS College Football Experience, where I talk FCS college football. And we are not just D1. We will talk FCS stadiums in due time. So if you're an FCS fan, buckle up. Don't worry, we will get to you. But the Big Ten did announce a bunch of I think Fox announced a bunch of Friday night games, most of them being Big Ten. I think 2 were Big 12. That's got to be somewhat great news for you, because, you know, I feel like the Big Ten kind of flirted with Friday nights over the past few years. Now it's full on. It's every single week for the most part. Did any catch your eye that you just say, "Oh, I'm going to be there"?
Yeah. So last year there were a few, and we mentioned it when we did the Big Ten show. There was a Friday night game at Maryland that I went to. There was a Friday night game at Purdue. You know, the opener is always. I went to a Friday at Michigan State. So you always want to take advantage of that. So I look through, and right now on my schedule, I have September 27th, Washington at Rutgers, which is a Friday night. Let's see, another Big Ten. There is Purdue at Michigan State, November 22nd. And what's interesting about that game is, if you remember last year, Michigan State had I want to say the game, I think it was a Black Friday game, and they played at Ford Field. Yeah. So if they're going to play Purdue in November outdoors in Michigan State, I'm all about that. There's also a game at Washington on a Friday night, and there's also a Iowa at UCLA on a Friday night. So the only thing from a scheduling perspective, this is like inside baseball. When you go to a Friday night West Coast game, it's very difficult to get back to the other side of the country for a noon or a 1 o'clock game. So right now I got an Arizona State Friday game. I got a Washington State Friday game. I got a Stanford Week 1 Friday game. And you have to look and see what's possible. Can either you're, going to try to get a West Coast doubleheader, which is hard because there's only like 15% of programs west of Texas, or you're going to get a red eye. For example, after that Stanford game starts at 7:30 versus TCU, I already have a flight booked at 12:35 a.m. out of SFO to Indianapolis. And on paper, I'm going to hit Butler at 1 and maybe Kentucky at 7:30. So it's a blessing because you're getting these games on off days on the weekday, but just the pure travel logistics makes it difficult when you're trying to 2 for 1. You know, if you were just cool with, okay, I'm going to Washington on a Friday night and then I'm going to Oregon on a Saturday, that's cool. But if you're trying to do 2 in one day, then you have limited options. You got to see what you can get back to.
And you just heard that clip we played from ESPN where it said 90 stadiums, and he's going to beat that this year. And folks, he is the most interesting man in college football. Are you kidding me right there? And as the season gets closer and closer, we're going to talk about Michael's trips, what he's got planned. And obviously when the season gets kicked or starts, we're going to go, we're going to be checking in from all the different places that Michael will be as he just goes to so many fucking games. It's incredible. All right. Well, hey. Look, what's that?
Can I squeeze in a shout out real quick?
Sure.
So we did a Group of 5 stadium poll on Twitter, and the final was between Boise State and App State. And during the final, Jeremiah Dickey, the AD at Boise State, he quote tweeted the final poll, and he goes, "These are 2 really awesome stadiums. Would you guys like to see a matchup between these two teams, and everybody in Boise State commenting. And so App State won the poll, and it was exciting. They won it last year. Kid Brewer Stadium, we've talked about, is an amazing stadium. And a couple days ago, about 5 or 6 days after the poll, App State put out a press release announcing a home-and-home series between Boise State and App State, playing at Boise in 2025 and playing in Boone at 2027. And they cited the poll on College Football Campus Tour in the press release, saying that Kid Brewer Stadium for the second year in a row won the nation's best G5 voting on the College Football Campus Tour site. And people replied, and they're like, "You're responsible and you did it. Obviously, you need people to vote and cooperate." But it was a very cool moment, especially with a few weeks before that when Jackson State won. That ended up on the local news in Jackson. If you go to Jackson State Wikipedia and you look at their facilities and they talk about the Mississippi Veterans Memorial Stadium, there is a line in there about them winning the best FCS invitational poll on the campus or College Football Campus Tour website. So just want to flex to a little bit to show that we have power. We have a platform here. And my guess is this home and home was already in the works, but the Doug Gillen is the AD at App State, and he liked and retweeted the stuff too. So anyways, that's a cool accomplishment in the summer, and it shows that important people in college football are paying attention to what we're talking about.
Yeah. And look, you never know the power of the internet, man. I one time I was me and my brother were breaking down a Pitt, West Virginia basketball game. This is years ago when we didn't even really make a lot of money on the pod or anything. And not that we're balling now, but I'm saying like this was like we hadn't really had that many sponsors and stuff. But and then come to find out that like they used our breakdown on why Pitt struggles. You had a Hall of Fame basketball coach, essentially, like one of his guys. This is how I met Moneyline Mac, essentially, who was the host of the Basketball Experience with me. He was part of the staff at West Virginia, and he tells me, before he ever had anything with us, when he had DM'd me and asked if we could share a word or two, and I'm like, okay, so we call each other, or I call him, and then he's like, just so we used what you guys said on our breakdown. And I'm like, that's insane. You have a Hall of Fame basketball coach using the power of the internet's always crazy. So you never know if you put that into fruition. I can tell you this though, myself, my brother have been to Boise. We've been to Boone. We had always said, man, the Mountain West, we went to App State and Wyoming last year. The Mountain West and Sun Belt are like two of our favorite conferences. We would hope they would play more often. And it seems like they're listening to you and they're listening to perhaps what the fans want. That is awesome news. The chat, once again, you could be a part of this conversation. YouTube.com/@StadiumHeadsSGPN. Cannabis Capper in there says, any FCS trips planned? You already talked about going to a Butler game briefly, but do you have any FCS trips like circled for sure, bro? The Wild, will you be there, whatever?
Yeah, so right now the priority is to find any weeknight FCS game. And so part of the releases that came out, ESPN put all their weeknight broadcast, and there is I want to say November 15th, North Carolina Central is playing there at home in Durham, and that's a Friday. I'm going to go to that. They won the HBCU National Championship in 2022. I have a few coaches, Courtney Cord, a couple other guys that have messaged me, invited me. It just hasn't worked. So I'm very excited to go to that one. I'm also excited about Halloween. The only game that's been on the schedule was Charlotte at home. I went to Charlotte last year. I've been to 3 Charlotte games, and they just put North Carolina Central at South Carolina State in Orangeburg. I've never been there. So Halloween at an FCS, Oliver Dawson, that's a great stadium. So that's 2 brand new ones. And as of right now, week 1, my Thursday opener is Eastern Washington on the Inferno. I want to do that because Washington State has a Friday night game on September 20th, so I don't have to look to double them. I can do them individually. I mentioned the Butler one. That is tentative because I don't know the night game that I would be going to. But yeah, so I need 51 more FCS schools. I'm at 78 or 128 or 129. I need 51 more to do all of them. 51 divided by 3 years is 17. So I need 17 per year. Last year I did 17. So if you put those 3, which are weeknights, and we got a 14-week regular season. If I could just do 1 per Saturday plus those 3, that's 17. If we get any new home FCS playoff games, you can add those to the bonus, but that's kind of the way we look. So we mentioned we still need the FCS kick times because, maybe I can get a double in the Northeast. Last year I did Bryant and Brown on the same day. I'm looking for Yale and Central Connecticut State, or Sacred Heart, or Holy Cross, or Stonehill, or Merrimack. So there's a lot to be determined, but I want to be the only person in the world to have seen a game at every FCS stadium. No one's even attempted it. I probably have the highest right now at 78, but we got teams moving up and that number keeps going down. So I got to keep putting my foot on the gas here to do that. So it's a mix. You want to go to Georgia, Alabama every year, but you got to, if you're a true stadium head college football traveler, you want to see them all.
Amen. And 17, he's already done the math on this, folks. That calls for Lou Holtz.
Well, I don't get breaking the head cold, but they're counting down 7-6-5.
Also, Pete mentions in the chat, come through SMU and throw some darts at Milo Butterfingers. Okay.
And SMU just redid their stadium last year. They got a $50 million gift. They put some bleachers in. They used to have a grass berm in one of the end zones. So I'm excited to see that. And, the cool thing about Texas is there's so many teams right near each other. In that area, you got Texas A&M Commerce, you got North Texas, you got SMU, TCU, go further down, Stephen F. Austin, all the ones in Houston. So, yeah, I would love to. I fly in and out of Dallas all the time. So I'd definitely like to take you up on that offer.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the look, folks, if you know Michael's coming, you want Michael to come. Not you can tout your stadium, but also tout where he can grab, I don't know, local. If you're in Memphis, where's the best barbecue spot? Where's the best, whatever. It's part of the experience, I think. Best tailgating scene. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So there's a bunch of different aspects of this when you travel. It's always great to know the secrets of your city and your college football experience. So definitely, I need to go. Dallas is one of the few cities in America that I've actually never been to. Dallas, I'd like to go see everything, from the JFK spot to, SMU football or wherever. It's strange that I've never been there, as far as I've traveled pretty much every city, I feel like, in the U.S. except Dallas. But shout out to Pete. I know he's excited about the Mustangs. And look, let's talk ACC stadiums. But before we do that, I want to tell you that the Stadium Heads podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. The NBA Finals are here. And our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting for you. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pickup games is simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and much, much more. You can make entries of all NBA players, or you can mix and match across your other favorite sports, which is great because they do have college football when that comes around. But right now, yeah, UFL's going on. If you think Adrian Martinez and the Birmingham Stallions are rolling and you want to mix that with the Stanley Cup, or some MLB players with some NBA, that's what makes it really cool. A lot of places don't offer stuff like that. So you can win up to 100 times the amount of money you enter, and it's a ton of fun. Underdog's available in 30 different states. Actually 30 and change, including California and Texas, and even the great country of Canada. And look, in Florida, there was a recent ruling, can't do props. Well, I beg to differ, because Underdog Fantasy just launched their champions, their player versus player format for the great state of Florida. So hop on over there, sign up with the promo code TCE SGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. Once again, Underdog Fantasy promo code TCE SGPN. All right, we are back on the Stadium Heads podcast. ACC Stadium, 17 damn stadiums. Let's go. Let's get into this. And from the start, let's talk about the fact that Michael's been to all 17, of course, right? And these are the last times he went to each stadium. So Florida State at Boston College, 2023, he went to Chestnut Hill. That was a great game. Boston College almost won that, I think, right?
31-29, yep.
Man, they fumbled away the opportunity, I believe. They almost did it. He was in Berkeley, California. Not gonna ask him if he dropped acid, but Arizona State.
I was with my mom and my brother, so no, I did not.
So, look, I guarantee you, there's been some people that have been there with their mom and their brother that have done acid up in those trees. But yes, Michael.
I had a second game at Fresno State after that, so it would have been an adventure more than I wanted to handle. So.
Amen. Arizona State at California in 2023. I'm trying to. I think California won that game, if memory serves me correct, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Louisiana Tech went into Clemson to Death Valley in 2022. That was the last time Michael was at Death Valley. But he was last Labor Day. He was able to go to Durham, North Carolina, to see Clemson play at Duke at Wallace Wade, and Duke pulled the upset. If you don't remember that, folks, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Or in a few minutes, but then last time he was at Georgia Tech at Bobby Dodd Stadium, he was there during the COVID year, which automatically I want to ask a bunch of questions. The Virginia Cavaliers came into town with Bronco Mendenhall and company. In 2021, he was in Tallahassee at Doak Campbell Stadium checking out Florida State. Don't know if he read any books up in the stands, but Notre Dame at Florida State, probably not. It was a big time game. Last time you were at Papa John Stadium, or I like to call it the Shack there in Louisville, Kentucky, was when you took on, or when Louisville took on the Wahoos of Virginia as well, which was, I actually think that was Louisville almost lost that and botched their whole ACC championship chances by that game. Then you went to the Battle of Miamis. You got to love that. Miami, Ohio at Miami, Florida last year. I think it was like an opening Friday night game. Then you were in Carter-Finley Stadium checking out NC State as they hosted Notre Dame last season as well. Also in 2023, you were in Chapel Hill checking out North Carolina as they hosted the Virginia Cavaliers as well. And then you went up to, I don't even remember what the hell they're calling this. I call it Three Rivers, but it's not Three Rivers. I call it Heinz, but it's not Heinz. Acupuncture Stadium or something like that. The Pittsburgh Panthers were hosting the North Carolina Tar Heels in 2023. That was just last season, folks. Most of these were last season. Then the Battle of the Iron Skillet in Dallas there. So, hey, Pete, he was there to see TCU, SMU back in 2022. And then he was in Palo Alto in 2017. That seems like ages ago compared to all these other games, as the Irish of Notre Dame went in to take on Stanford. Did Stanford win that game? Because I feel like for a while they were messing up.
No, they did not win that game. No.
Okay. Well, either way, he was there, and then you went to Syracuse, New York, to the Carrier Dome as the Syracuse Orangemen were taking on Clemson. Is that the one where Clemson won in overtime, or no?
No, it was I think that was 2 years prior, that one. It was just an ugly weeknight game that they pulled out, low scoring, but not that one.
Then you were at Scott Stadium there in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2019 as the Hokies, the Commonwealth Cup. Virginia Tech at Virginia in 2019. Those are always great. Also, you were in Blacksburg in 2021 for the first game back with fans after COVID, which to me, that's probably the game that stands out most on this whole list. As North Carolina went to Virginia Tech opening Thursday night, if memory serves me correct, enter Sandman and all that good stuff. And then finally, Wake Forest, you were there in 2022 as Dino Babers and the Syracuse Orangemen went into Winston-Salem. I mean, is the one that stands out the most to you out of all of those? Would I be correct by saying the Virginia Tech one, or is it, I don't know, is it a little bit of everything?
I mean, I rushed the field at Duke when they beat Clemson last year. I rushed the field at Virginia when they beat Virginia Tech in 2019. They had lost the Commonwealth Cup like 15 times in a row. Rushed the field at Virginia Tech when it was a Friday night opener, first game after COVID, top 10 UNC, Sam Howell, and they just battered him all over the field. So rushed the field at 3 of those. The Wake Forest one, that was my only triple header ever. I did an 11 o'clock game at Gardner-Webb, a 3:30 game at Charlotte, and an 8 p.m. game at Wake Forest. So there's a lot of memorable games on there. And, 8 of the 17 I went to last year. So, there's some people on Twitter every once in a while tell me that I don't go to big games. Well, I went to 8 ACC games last year. I think that's pretty big.
Yeah, I would say so too. All right, let's hop into this alphabetically. The first stadium we got is Boston College Alumni Stadium in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. It's 67 years old, seats 44,500 people. Boston College gets this reputation, I think, of like they don't care about college football. It wasn't always that way. It's funny, my family just huge college football nuts and sports nuts, and my uncle always tells me about BC in the 80s. He said, man, the place was lit. And I remember it somewhat in the early 90s being lit, like pretty lit. So how many times have you been there first off?
So I've been to 2 games there. This one last year versus Florida State. It was, I want to say, week 2. It was a noon game. And then I went to a 6 p.m. game at New Hampshire, 31-29. I mean, they had Florida State sweating buckets. It was a great game. The other game I went to was 2018. It was I think it was either a Thursday or Friday night game, and they beat Miami and rushed the field. So 2 good games, 2 good atmospheres, and I just like the stadium. I like where it's situated. The parking is atrocious. It's one of the worst you could possibly do. But once you find a spot and you get situated, it's a very intimate stadium. You can tell there's almost no space around the perimeter. In between 1988 and 1994, they basically redid the whole stadium. They added upper decks on both sides. They added a press box. They removed the track. And so they really did a good job of making a nice 44,000 seat, not simple, but straightforward stadium.
And it's got some history. I believe New England Patriots have played some seasons there, as well as they had a USFL team. Then I'm drawing a blank. The Breakers, Boston Breakers, I believe. I think they played there. So you have some history outside of just Boston College athletics. It's crazy. A lot of people will kind of say, well, they don't have passionate fan bases. And I just think they need to have a winner and to ignite that. And I like the way the stadium looks. When I go through your photos here, once again, youtube.com/@StadiumHeadsSGPN. I like the stadium. It looks kind of cool to me. It's kind of under to me.
Yeah, and if you go back to the previous photo, under that American flag in the far on the far left, they got all the retired numbers over there. They got Matt Ryan, Doug Flutie, Art Donovan, one of my dad's favorite players from NFL films, Baltimore Colts guy. So they do a good job honoring history. But yeah, it started out at 26,000 seats. Like I said, they pretty much redid it between 88 and 94. And they just hired Bill O'Brien. And that's a showing that they are serious. And I follow some Boston College accounts, and they talk about the recruits they're bringing in, and there's opportunity in the ACC. Florida State, maybe they're not going to be as good as last year. Clemson hasn't been absolutely dominant the last couple of years, so 7-8 wins is not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and for a minute there, they were like, in my opinion, one of the quarterback U's. I think Stevie Adazio kind of ruined that. But prior to that, like I said, whether it's Doug Flutie and then Glenn Foley and Mark Hartzell, who played in the NFL, and then the Hasselbeck brothers and Matt Ryan. They had another guy too, Brian St. Pierre, that played, I think, for the Steelers a little bit. So it was at one point, like, to me, like if you wanted to play quarterback, if you were serious about, making the NFL as a quarterback, they were one of the schools you would list as a recruit saying, I got to go check out Boston College. But maybe they can turn back to that. Bill O'Brien, Patty C, my co-host on the College Football Experience podcast, he had put that energy out there for years, saying that the problem with Boston College is they don't have an Irish guy coaching them. They need an O'Brien, and he'd been saying this for like 4 years. He put this thing out there, and it finally came true. We'll see how Bill O'Brien does there. But man, the stadium has a cool look to it, man. It really does. It just looks classic to me. And there I can see where you rushed the field. That was against Miami on a weeknight. The goalpost is down now. Did security take that down, or did security took that down before the fans could get it?
Yeah, you're not going to see it that nicely placed.
Yeah, right, that's what I figured.
The end zone that way. So what I did was I ran on the field. I tried to push my luck. So I tried to run on the field, rush, and then swim back upstream up to the bleachers and try to get a photo there. So was able to do both. And there was a light show going on, and just a cool moment because you don't expect it. You're not, sometimes you don't you're not fully in tune with everything, and you don't think, oh man, if they beat Miami, they're going to rush the field. And all of a sudden you're there and 10 minutes are left and people are getting position. So it was a cool moment to be there.
Yeah, and this right here looks pretty fucking. That just looks like Royal Classic Boston. Some type of. If you're listening to this on the audio side, it's like a big ass trophy with an eagle on the top, or I don't know if it's a trophy, but looks like it in a way. Is this right outside the stadium, or is this just on campus somewhere?
It's above the stadium. It's like where you pull in the roundabout. The frontage. I'm terrible with metaphors here, but yeah, it's a prominent display piece there. And, it's a solid gold eagle. It looks really cool.
And then what do we got here? Oh, one of my favorite shots. This was part of your calendar last year. And this is gold. This is absolute gold. You need to have like Manute Bol sit where you're sitting. And even with that, I don't even know if he can see the game from there. Obstructed view. Michael's got 2 photos here. YouTube.com/@StadiumHeadsSGPN. Because they're fucking hilarious. So basically you got to stand like not even on the cement. You got to stand where the actual bleachers / poles are to actually see the game, correct?
Yeah. So this is part of what we talk about all the time, why there are obstructed views. So in front of you is a scoreboard, and it wasn't there originally. And what they tried to do is thread the needle between having it low enough so it didn't block any views on the first level, and then not stick up so high so it doesn't block rows on the second level. Well, it ended up blocking the first 4 rows. These seats are not for sale. However, there's a seat number, there's a row number, and in the obstructed view rule book, that's an obstructed view seat. And so this one, after the 2 weeks before the USC one, these things just went crazy. There's a lot of hurt feelings about this one. I've been invited back to Boston to kind of schmooze things over, but this is an iconic seat. And, I did a whole lap around the stadium and I was convinced there was no obstructed view. I come up the stairs on the second level and it was right in front of me. And it was like, heart palpitations, and like, I'm exaggerating, but it was like, this is the most obstructed view seat. So we always sign a percentage of the field visibility, 0 through 100. If you can see, 40 yards of the stadium, that's 40%. This was the first confirmed 0% visibility seat. And so, I had some kids, I had to promise these kids I would follow them back on Twitter if they helped me with the photo. And again, the posture and the concentration on the game, despite the fact you cannot see the field at all. That's what really sells an obstructed view photo.
Absolutely fucking hilarious, man. And look, we are not talking shit. Well, let me clarify again. We are not talking shit about your stadium if you have an obstructed view. We love the fact you're using a classic stadium, that you're not destroying it and starting some new nonsense. We just, it's something that's niche about that stadium that we like to highlight. And specifically when I say we, Michael, even more so, but we both like it. And it's something that we seek out when we go to a college football game. So,
and I'll tell you this, when you watch next year, watch Twitter, and you're going to see people taking photos from these seats. And they're an attraction now. They're a tourist attraction. So instead of trying to put lipstick on a pig and rope it off and yell at the people who point it out, just have fun with it. Okay. We think it's fun. We're not making fun of the stadium. We love the stadium, but we also love this, and it's funny.
Exactly. Well said. All right. Next we jump to, oh man, I love this stadium. All right. Just from a TV standpoint, we're jumping to the California Golden Bears Memorial Stadium. Classic name, 102 years old, Berkeley, California, seat 63,000. And in my opinion, it's one of the most underrated stadiums, I think, in all of America. So as far as playing a football game at a venue, I think a lot of people don't think about. They think Cal, they probably don't care much about football. Well, they do. And the stadium, they've invested recently a lot in the stadium to get this thing to where it's at. I love this stadium. Let's jump into it because look, from the start, it's kicking ass to me. Talk to me about how many times have you been there?
So I live 20 minutes from Cal Berkeley. So I've been there a lot. I've been to 2 games there. 2019, I went to a game with my dad, my brother, my dad's girlfriend. We went to Cal versus Washington State. And then last year, I went one day before my birthday with my mom and my brother to a noon game there. And I mentioned I went to a night game at Fresno State, and I met my dad and his girlfriend down there. So it was a family 2-for-1. But you know what? I'm just going to rattle off some things. So first of all, it's a U.S. National Register of Historic Places. So this place is protected. It's built in 1923. Has 63,000 seat capacity, but the original was 75. They scaled it down. It is located in Strawberry Canyon. You see up the trees, they call it Tightwad Hill because you can watch the game for free up there. You mentioned that there's been some recent renovations. They built the stadium right on top of Hayward Fault, which is an earthquake fault. And so in 2010, 2011, the Giants played, or the Cal played at the San Francisco Giants Stadium it's called Oracle Park now. While they retrofitted the stadium, they did seismic effects on it to make sure it was solid. They lowered the field to make it so there's no obstructed seats, at least below. And they made this into a great stadium. And you would never guess this is 102 years old. So, you know, some of your logic, what you talked about for Boston College, it applies to Cal too, because when Cal has a winner, they fill that place out. In the mid 2000s with, you know, Aaron Rodgers and Marshawn Lynch and Deshaun Jackson, they were the only team that could go heads up with USC, Reggie Bush, and Matt Leinart. So sleeping giant, we hate that term, but Cal is absolutely there. They have everything you would want, facility, stadium. They just need to win ball games.
Yeah, John Madden used to teach football classes at the University of Cal. Yeah. All right, I mean, we can go on and on. The history, the Cal had some awesome teams back in the day. A lot of great players have played from the visiting point of view, but from the home field side, I know you just touched on a bunch when Jeff Tedford had that program rolling, but over the years, and that's why, you know, me and my buddies on the College Football Experience podcast, you know, that my brother's and you know, an ACC guy, he's fearful. He's like, man, before Cal, you know, if they ever get their ducks in a row, you know, whether it was Hardy Nickerson and Ken Harvey back in the day, or they just always have guys, he thinks they can come in and be a force in the ACC. So, and is this during COVID?
No. And see, that's exactly what I was going to comment on. So this is week 4. This is a noon game against Arizona State. It's, you know, 60 degrees out. So it's not, you know, typical 72 degree, 75 degree California weather, but this is perfect, enjoyable atmosphere. You know, it's not like they're 1-7, so they're out of it. They still have things to play for. I want to say they opened with Auburn, and so they had so they, you know, there's still reason to be optimistic. And this was the crowd. And so, you know, me being a stadium guy, photographer, taking pride in my photos, I can't post these on Twitter because people think I'm trolling the stadium, and it's very frustrating because this is what I had to work with. What can you do? You know, so I wish I was traveling and doing more stuff back in the day when they were good, but this photo would look a lot better and with a lot of people and not being confused for a COVID photo. It's like a painting that got distorted or something. It just it's sad to see.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and look, and I was just recently arguing that Cal fans are better than Stanford fans as far as supporting their football team. But it's a bad showing there. It's a really bad showing. Yeah. But love the hill there where you could watch the games. I've always loved any stadiums that have that. I know Sun Devil Stadium has that, you know, has had that. I remember countless NFL Cardinal games were, and the Padres Stadium back in the day. Qualcomm had a little bit there. I always enjoy that aspect of it. But yeah, this stadium to me is this, and I know me and you mentioned this, I think last year's Cal preview, that they could host the national championship here, and they should. They should. This is a classic stadium. You're close to an airport, major city.
Good weather.
Yes. It's just, and to me, like, you put your national championship in a classic stadium like this. I'm sorry. Most of those national championship stadiums are trash to me. And
well, the last on-campus national championship was 2003 Arizona State. So we haven't had an on-campus national championship in over 20 years. And, we mentioned when we did the SEC, maybe Austin, Texas would be a good place. Well, Cal Berkeley is another one.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I love this stadium, man. I'll be honest. This is one of my, if I had to do like a top 20 list, this probably makes my top 20. Where's this right here?
That's looking out the back, the home side, and you can see the water, San Francisco Bay. And, we talked about the Rose Bowl a couple weeks ago where, you started out during the day and then the sun sets on the San Gabriel Mountains and you get, great scenes. You're getting the same thing at Cal Berkeley, a 6:00 game during daylight savings time. Sun's not going to go down till 7:30 or 8. You get to time out these photos. Weather great. They're near Silicon Valley. Students can get internships with Fortune 500 companies. You could take BART, the train, and be in San Francisco in 20 minutes. Berkeley is an extremely walkable city. There's a lot of history and things that you can learn there. So it's hard for me because I feel critical of them because I want them to be good, not because I'm a Cal fan, because they're local and they have that potential. So I'm rooting for them. I wish that somebody in the program would reach out to me and, try to help promote. And, I know they're a Power 4, a big school, but, show off facilities, show off practice, anything like that. I would absolutely be willing to do that.
Yeah. For a school that has as much history right now, if you're looking at YouTube, youtube.com/@StadiumHeadsSGPN, you see there's a memorial for the Californians that lost their life in World War I. Also to the right, Kevin Moan. Hold on 1 second. I have a bobblehead from Kevin Moan. What I think is the perfect play in the history of football as a sport, not only college football. The perfect metaphor of what football has done to the planet is Kevin Moan.
Nice.
Right? With the band guy. Look, if you don't know the play, folks, we're talking about the 85th big game, John Elway with Stanford. The band comes on the field on the final play of the game, and Cal returns a kick, pitches the ball like 6-7 times, and Kevin Moan destroys a band guy in the end zone, which was absolutely hilarious. But it, to me, is it's the greatest play. We have conversations in the office all the time at SGPN. Favorite football play. I think this is my favorite play of all time. So you add that to the mix of where they're playing this. That's where that play occurred. So. Yeah. And that statue's new, right? I feel like it's only a couple years old.
Exactly. It's a couple of years old. They did a dedication. They had hit Kevin out there. They had the band guy that he hit. And it's cool. You could go, it's life, regular human size. So you can stand next to it and not look like a tiny ant. It's a good photo spot. So yeah, dedicating a stadium to veterans that paid the ultimate sacrifice. That's what stadiums were about back in the day. And then the zaniest, if you think of Joe Starkey, the local radio call, how he just loses his what during it. These are things that you can sell to recruits, and you can talk about the history of Cal football.
Hell yeah, man. That's awesome. That's one of my favorite stadiums. I don't care if there's people in it or not. I love that stadium. And look, if you are listening to this in the Bay Area, get on out to that stadium. That thing is way better than that. I don't know, wherever they're playing what's the name of the Niner Stadium now down there in Santa Clara or whatever, but
Dance Stadium.
Yeah. Next up, we got the Clemson Tigers Memorial Stadium again.
Love it.
Very awesome. You don't need to dress up your name with some .com or something like that. Memorial Stadium, AKA Death Valley, the real Death Valley, they say. Clemson, South Carolina, 82 years old, seats 81,500 fans. This is college football 101. You know what I mean? Like this, look at this right here. That shot. What game is this? How many times you been there?
So I've been there to 2 games, 2019 Thursday night season opener versus Georgia Tech. They got their national championship rings from the 2018 national championship game. They game day was there and they obliterated Georgia Tech. Just destroyed them. And this game was 2022 versus La Tech. I went to a noon game, Georgia at South Carolina, and then was able to catch the night game at Death Valley. And Death Valley is one you want to see at night. And this photo, you have to get almost out of the stadium, get a bracelet, walk up this separate hill and you get to the top of it. I mean, I don't know how much higher you can go at any college football stadium than this. And I mean, that's just an incredible view.
And what they also have the rock where you can tap, where all the players tap when you come down the hill, right? Isn't that?
Yeah. So it's Howard's Rock. And so, first of all, clarify Death Valley. There's two Death Valleys. There's LSU Death Valley and there's Clemson Death Valley. LSU's Death Valleys during the 1950s. Clemson was a decade earlier. The coach for Presbyterian College, his name was Lonnie McMillan. He was talking to sports writers and he said, before the game, it's almost impossible to go down there and win a game at Death Valley. So that's where I coined it. Howard's Rock was a rock that was picked up. Frank Howard, Clemson legend, that was picked up by a Clemson booster in Death Valley, California. He brought it back. For a while, it was just a doorstop, and then the Death Valley moniker started to catch on, and so he knew that rock was from Death Valley, California, so he made something out of it. Now it's in the end zone, protected, and when they run down the hill, it's right there. And, there's a quote from the early 1940s. They had a coach, his name was Jess Neely, and he had a good season at Clemson, and he accepted a job at Rice. And this was before Memorial Stadium. And on the way out, they asked him about Clemson building a new stadium. And he said, don't waste your money. He said, build a field with 10,000 seats behind the local YMCA. That's all you'll ever need. And, talk about, where they say images that precede unfortunate events. This is a quote that did. Clemson has 81,500 seats. It's the largest stadium in the SEC. And it's a scary place to play. They're, one of the best home field advantages of all the country. So a lot of history going back, we're talking about Death Valley. We're talking about quotes from 1940s, and it all manifests where, the record crowd, 1999, 86,092 fans in an 81,500 seat stadium. So they jumped on that hill where Dabo runs down. So you could go on and on about how important this stadium is to college football. And the fact that it's not in the SEC and it's still so revered just speaks even more about what they've been able to build down there in Clemson.
Yes, and you wonder, maybe they might be in the SEC. Hopefully not, though. But I like them. They're one of the original ACC schools. So I hope they stay. I hope they figure a way to stay. But yeah, these photos look. They got the national championship teams up there, and then a cool little billboard.
Yeah. So when you go through under the bleachers and you're walking through the concessions, they got the three championships they have: 1981, 2016, and 2018. And so you just get that hammered into you, and that's what you're supposed to do. We talked about it on previous episodes. If you have history, if you have national champion, put it on display, because not everybody has it. And it's not like, Georgia and Clemson are in the same spot. Georgia won in 1980 and Clemson won in 1981. And then it was a 35-year break, and now they're both winning. And who are the top programs in college football? Clemson and Georgia are in the top 5 for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And this is because Dabo arrives on like a bus too, normally, right? They take like a bus around the stadium.
I believe so. Yeah. So this is, they've updated the outside, changed the back of the scoreboard to put on all the championships. But, this shows some of the old, when we did Jordan Hare a couple of weeks ago, it's very similar where, okay, it's not a, perfect modern stadium, but look at how it looks. It looks cool. The lighting on it in the night. So unique. It has character, and I like it.
Yeah, Damani in the chat who says, "Fun fact: Jess Daly coached at Vanderbilt as well. They also have a street named after him down there in Nashville." Woo!
Wow,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he ate his words in Clemson. That's for
sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully he foresaw the future at Vanderbilt better than he did at Clemson. Next up, we go to the Duke Blue Devils. Look at that old logo. They got to bring that back, man.
Funny story real quick there. A few years ago, I was taking statue photos. I always take a photo with the campus statue, and I saw a bronze statue of a devil, and I looked around the campus and I couldn't find it. And it turned out it was just an artist rendering, but it looked really real. And you should see all the students looking at me cross-eyed. Can you point me to the devil statue, please? So I wish they would do it, because it's a cool, I mean, how many people have devils?
Put a statue of that guy right there.
Yes. And it looked very similar to that. Perfect. I wanted it.
Yeah.
I wanted it.
Wallace Wade Stadium is, to me, another one that it's almost like Cal Stadium. I love it. All right. Durham, North Carolina, 95 years old, seats 40,004 people. And last Labor Day, I believe this photo's from, you can confirm that, but yeah, Duke, Clemson, and look, Duke's throwing a lot of money into the football program. I think they're starting to read the tea leaves that football drives the bus on college athletics, and it's fun seeing. I know that, Elko's gone to Texas A&M. They go get Manny Diaz, but Cutcliffe kind of got this thing rolling, and I like with it. Like, I think they have a classic stadium. I think they have a lot of reasons to be excited. They've gotten players drafted left and right in the NFL draft over the past 10, 15 years. I like the future of this program, especially knowing that they're throwing money into the football program. And then when you mix that with the stadium, this used to have a track around it. My brother, lives not far away. He went to an Alabama game at, one of the only non-con games on the road that Nick Saban played was at Duke when they had Mark Ingram and everybody. And there was a track around it. It needed a lot of help. Their practice facility, Steve Spurrier used to be the head coach of Duke in the 80s back with Anthony Dilwig and whatnot. And, they used to only have a 40 yards of practice in their facility. So he would complain about, like, come on, what's going on here? We only got 40 yards to practice. They fixed all of that, over the years. And I think they're a school that could be on the come up here because of that. And I love this stadium. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, if you go around campus and you look at, I sent you some other photos of the other buildings on the campus, there's no shortage of money. They know how to build nice facilities. So they needed to do it. And in 2014, they did a whole renovation. They added a 5-story press box. They lowered the field. They centered the field. So when you remove the track, if you don't eat up that space, then it's just going to be further away. So what you do is lower the field so people could get closer. They added 4K seats. At its peak, it had 56,000, and now it's at 40, which is a nice size for them. They have a lot. This game, you could see that if you look at the photo, there's a lot of blue and there's orange, obviously, but it's not. I went to Vanderbilt, Georgia in 2019. It was 90% Georgia fans. This was about 60-40 Duke, and Clemson's not far away, so they could show up. And when Clemson, you could see that Clemson was vulnerable and they had a chance, that like ignited the students and it became a very lit environment. And one of the photos that you're showing of students lining up at the rail to rush the field, like they beat them 28-7. And so not only did they, know early that they had an opportunity to rush the field, but they got to celebrate the victory the whole time. So it was a great event. And I think it was on a Monday night all by itself, and the whole nation saw what peak Duke football could look like.
Look, if Duke does that to basketball, which I'll get to in a second, but there's no excuse to me. Like, the potential's there. I know it's a private school. I know their enrollment's not what it is, but I don't care. You're in Durham, North Carolina, which is, around there. If you have a good college football team, I think people will show up. There's no pro team there. All right. Like you see it with the Carolina Hurricanes recently came down there. People show up to that stadium. So I'm not buying it. I think you throw the money in and the people will follow. And I'm excited about their future. And obviously this, first off, they did host a Rose Bowl there in 42, as I know you took this photo. That's awesome. So that's part of the history of that stadium, that during World War II, they hosted a Rose Bowl. And I like this area here where the fans sit, like right by the end zone. And then you storm the field here, which that's an awesome shot there. But to me, this too, you add this is some of the like, and if I've been to Cameron Indoor Stadium, so like you go past this stuff, the stadium or the campus, the buildings and structures, like to the point you were saying, it looks incredible. It looks like you're like just it like nothing else in North Carolina, I would say. And I see you got to Cameron Indoor Stadium there. We can tout about that. Where'd you go to?
It was, first of all, it's not affordable most of the time, but this was so, sometimes I stay on the road and I don't fly. If you go to a Saturday night game at Duke and there's a Tuesday game in Ohio for MACtion, it doesn't really make sense to fly home on a Sunday and then fly out Monday night to try to make it so you stay on the road. So this was 2 years ago. I saw North Carolina play at home the night before, and this was Duke versus Stetson. And I got a seat in the Cameron Crazies for like $72. It wasn't very expensive. So, it wasn't lit like it would be for an ACC conference game, but how many people can actually say that they got to jump with the Cameron Crazies and do that? So And as you mentioned, I mean, they have a nice soccer stadium. They got a lacrosse stadium. They have, the Duke Chapel is beautiful. Everything on this campus, they're plush with money. You can see that. And Cameron Indoor, even if you're not a big college basketball fan, I enjoy it, but I'm not like huge into it. This was a place that was on my bucket list that I really wanted to see.
Yeah, I've been there, and like I said, if you haven't, like, that stadium's super unique just because of how it's like a high school stadium almost, and it's just it packs out. It's awesome. I mean, it's everything that's good with college basketball as well. Let's talk about Florida State next. Doak Campbell Stadium. I like to call it the library. Tallahassee, Florida. 74 years old. Seats 79,560. I mean, look at this place rocking. This is the Notre Dame game, I take it?
Yeah, so this was another Monday night Labor Day game. This was against Notre Dame. Notre Dame or Florida State starter, I can't remember his name, but Mackenzie Milton came in, and that was his first game after his,
Jordan Travis.
Jordan Travis. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jordan Travis.
That was before I knew who Jordan Travis would end up being. But Mackenzie Milton came in there, and this was the season opener on Monday, and same exact setup for Duke. The whole nation was watching, and they weren't as good as Duke or as Notre Dame, but they took them to overtime. It was a great game.
Yeah, Mackenzie Milton almost rallied the whole and stole that game in a way. This is another one from that. It looks like the same game, but the stadium looks really cool. The fans are passionate. They do the chant, like the Atlanta Braves chant. And look, I threw in this because they're known to read. It's if you're gonna read a book at a stadium, I think this one gets the nominee, aka the library. Because I mean, this guy clearly you can tell it's a real page turner. Now Clemson is beating the hell out of them to hit, but he had the foresight to bring a novel to the fucking game. This is the only photo that is not Michael's, by the way, on this entire slate. But unbelievable.
I wish it was mine.
Yeah,
I did. I was at South Dakota State playoff game against Albany last year in the semifinals, and the score was very similar to that. And there was a woman reading a book, and I took a photo. I posted on Twitter. It didn't get the same reaction, but what was different about that, it was like Arctic cold, and she was in a big winter jacket. This guy has, a golden tan here, just a pro, and this is one of the lasting images of college football right here.
Absolutely.
But this stadium is what's cool about this stadium is it didn't start out like anything that you would rank highly. It opened in 1950. It only had 15,000 seats, and it has undergone so many renovations. They called it the erector set because it looked like it was just pieced together. And so finally they made a huge commitment, similar to what Notre Dame did. Was they incorporated under the bleachers and around the stadium administrative buildings, classrooms, other facilities, and they wrapped the whole building in brick. And it is the second largest continuous brick structure in the world behind the Great Wall of China. And if you go, I do a lot of historical tweets of the progression of stadiums. And if you look at this thing, 20 years ago, you would never imagine that it's a great stadium. And if you get the outside view of this prodigious brick stadium, it's one of the best. It's 79,560, so it's about 2,000 smaller than Clemson, but 1A and 1B in the ACC.
Yeah, and then you got a couple of statues there that look pretty awesome. One of legendary coach Bobby Bowden. I wonder. Like, do they not have any of their players? Because that'd be interesting. They have so many great players from their.
So obviously that's Bobby Bowden on the right. On the left is Chief Osceola and Renegade, and they leave that torch lit, which is after the game, which was cool. The only statue that I can remember on the outside is this sportsmanship thing, and they got a player laying on his back, and then another guy standing over, reaching out his hand to lift him up. But yeah, I mean, you could put a Dion statue, you could put a Warwick Dunn statue, you could put Peter Warwick statue. There's a ton. I know I'm leaving out a ton of guys, but there's a lot of people. T-Buck, a bunch of guys that you could put out there.
100%. I mean, there's just a rich in talent. So Tallahassee, Florida, got to get there, folks. And look, before we get to the next stadium, what to tell you, that the Stadium Heads podcast is brought to you by Rhythm. Feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme. It's bobsled time. No, it's not. It's rhythm time though. And look, if you're betting on the NBA player props, or just NBA player props in general, then you need to download Rhythm. That's RITHMM. Look, Rhythm gives you a menu of best player props for every single NBA playoff game. Obviously, the finals are here, but yeah, Rhythm it makes it easy to go through. It finds the best player props to put your money on in a matter of seconds. And Rhythm's predictions are backed by over 3 years of data and a team of data scientists and quants that focus on fine-tuning their algorithm to give you the best shot at winning. Rhythm pairs its predictions with player prop graphs to help you feel even more confident in your picks, which you can make, wherever you normally do, or DFS picks, whatever it is you choose to do. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm finds the best player prop lines, all backed by AI data without you needing to endlessly scroll through the sportsbook. Check it out. Claim a free 7-day trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. Once again, that's RITHMM, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. All right, we are back on the Stadium Heads podcast. Shout out to Cannabis Capper. Say, where's the Charlie Ward statue? Amen. Next we jump to Bobby Dodd.
Real quick, hey,
what's that?
Hey, can I throw in 2 more things about Florida State real quick?
Sure.
One is they have a Monday night opener on Labor Day this year. So that's going to be a game that is the only one. So I'll be going to that. And the other thing is it is undergoing a renovation right now. One of the, it's either the visitor side or the home side. They're ripping out all of the bleachers. They are building a premium seating area, reducing capacity about 5,000 to 10,000. And it's going to have one of those kind of outdoor patio looking things. And so it's not exactly what we want in college football. I mean, you think the ACC reducing capacity in Florida State when they just went undefeated is not exactly what we want, but they're investing money. They're trying to do it, but they're also displacing some season ticket holders. So everybody keep an eye on the stadium renovation situation in Tallahassee.
Yeah, and if you're at that game, I believe Michael's going to be there. So don't forget, hit him up. Cannabis Capper says, is the FSU renovation going to be as hilarious as the Vanderbilt one? I don't think so, but
yeah, well, right now there's going to be a big hole on one of the sides. So between the 20s on either the visitor side or the home side, it's going to be a construction zone. So normally I'm going to avoid stadiums under construction. Vanderbilt is off limits this year. Louisiana is off limits. Obviously Northwestern and Kansas don't even have their stadiums anymore. So if this game weren't the only game on Monday night, I would not be going there. But the benefit of going there is showcasing the progress of the renovation. But people could go online and do Doak renovation, and you could see the renderings that they have for it. So it's counter to what we want in college football. These premium seating is displacing season ticket holders, raising prices there. But their theory is if they reduce the seats, but then charge double for the other seats, they can make their money back and improve, quote unquote, their stadium. So keep an eye on that.
Keep an eye on it, folks. Florida State, and they're nice, changes moving forward. I like to throw shade at them because they went from being broke to rich really fast of
Very
late.
quick.
And there's a lot of questions around that in the college football world about maybe some private equity coming in there. But anyway, let's move to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Georgia. Bobby Dodd Stadium. It's 111 years old. It seats 51,913 people. And, I get super mad at Georgia Tech for doing this deal with Mercedes-Benz every year. Yeah. Like Notre Dame plays at Georgia Tech this year, but it's not at a Georgia Tech game. It's not at Bobby Dodd Stadium. It's at the Falcon Stadium, which is terrible to me. It's not Fulton County. I'd give it a little bit of a pass, but it's at the Mercedes-Benz thing, which to me, everything a football stadium should not be. And
Agreed.
And I get disappointed because you take away your home edge. If you want to be Georgia Tech, which I remember with Bobby Ross and Marco Coleman and Dorsey Levens and just talent, winning national championships. In 1990, they won one. And if you're going to do that, you got to play. Ask yourself this question. Would Georgia ever play a home game at Mercedes-Benz against Notre Dame? No, they just recently played a home and home, and it was in Athens, right?
They are playing the week 1 in Mercedes against Clemson though. So,
but that's because they did Jerry Richardson, right?
Okay.
But I get your point. But to me, you're shooting yourself, especially when you're Georgia Tech, because Georgia Tech is a much smaller school than Georgia.
I agree.
To me, you're removing the home element. We saw them. Georgia Tech played Louisville in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz last year, and that was a Louisville crowd.
Yeah.
When you go back and watch that game, you're ruining what was once. You remember a few years ago, Paul Johnson era, they knocked off Florida State on like a blocked field goal, returned it for a touchdown. That place was rocking. You can find that clip on YouTube. That is Georgia. You can't tell me Georgia Tech doesn't have passionate fans, because you watch that clip in like 2017 or 18, and you're like, why would they stray from this? But here they are. Once a year playing at Mercedes-Benz. I can't stand it. But when was this and what game was this?
So I've been to 2 games there, a 2019 weeknight game and a 2020 COVID weeknight game. So this was 2020, reduced capacity, but I'll tell you the 2019 weeknight game was not much different. I think it was raining. You could see a lot of people in ponchos. They didn't have a good record. So grateful, we talked about in the SEC to have football. But this place, it's the oldest FBS stadium in the country, opened in 1913. They've been playing on that site since 1905. It was Grant Field forever. Started out with 7,000 seats, record crowd 60,000. They reduced capacity to 51. It's located in Midtown Atlanta. We don't get these stadiums, Franklin Field in Philadelphia and these ones in big, Columbia is in, Manhattan. We get these. And so you have to love the setup there because, obviously when it started out with 7,000 seats, it wasn't eating up this much real estate, but this is unique. And Atlanta, it's the busiest airport in the world. And that's the Bank of America Plaza building that hovers over the stadium. There's just so many cool things about Bobby Dodd Stadium, not just because of the age of it, because, you mentioned the history, but also that just where it's located in a major city. It's just cool. You like being there.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if I had more time, I would go find the clip against Florida State, and you'll see what a great environment.
I know the quote. Mark Jones is the announcer, and he runs it back, and he scores, and he says, "What a time to be alive!" And his voice is hoarse. And they blocked the field goal and ran it back for a touchdown as time expired. And Florida State was just trying to kick and win it, and if they missed, it was going to go to very similar circumstances to kick 6 Auburn at Alabama in 2011.
But that place was rocking, and that's the potential of whether it was George O'Leary, whether it's Bobby Ross. This is a program to me. I know they have tougher academics, but the track record speaks for itself. Back to the days of John Heisman. So this is high on my bucket list. I've been to Atlanta plenty of times, but I've just never been here. I want to get there. I hope Brent Key can get that program back to where it needs to be. And as you see right there, that's a statue of Bobby Dodd.
So November 14th, Thursday night game. I will be there. Non-COVID game. So 2024 weeknight game. You got to do it. So that's what I'm going to be at.
Hell yeah. Let's go, folks. Look, next up we go to the Shack, aka I'm calling this Cardinal Stadium. I'm not calling it that bullshit. All right,
I had to look up the name. I didn't even know what the name was. So it's had 4 names in 26 years, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's Cardinal Stadium. All right. Commonwealth Stadium's Kentucky. Cardinal Stadium's Louisville. Get this bullshit out of here. Located in Louisville, Kentucky, 26 years old, seats 60,800. So my only complaint with it would be is how's it only 26 years old? Because their program back to Schnellenberger and Johnny Unitas back in the day, Mark Clayton and, Ernest Givens, where the hell were they playing games before? Why couldn't we preserve that? Because they have, like I said, there's some greats that have played there. Seats 60,800. And when you look at the photos, I actually think it looks like a pretty awesome stadium. Tell me about your experiences there.
So I've been to 3 games there. So going back to, they had Old Cardinal Stadium, and I want to say that it was near a rundown fairgrounds area. And so they just decided to start over and build. And what's interesting is they built it. This one is, so the name is LNN Federal Credit Union Stadium, rolls right off the tongue. It just had 42,000 seats here. It had an open end zone, and now it's 60,000. You can see they put that very distinct pyramid diamond looking bleachers with there. But I went to 3 games. 2019, it was a Sunday night game on the first week of the season versus, actually it was Monday, another Monday Labor Day game. That was against Notre Dame. And what was that quarterback for Ian Book for Notre Dame? And it was a good game. 2022, they played a weeknight game against Florida State, and that was a great game. And then last year was another weeknight game versus Virginia. So I've been to 3 games in Louisville. I feel like I know the stadium and that area very well now. As I mentioned, it's undergone several changes. They do have a Johnny Unitas statue in the north end zone that overlooks the field, which is really cool. And hopefully, not too short a time, they'll be putting a Lamar Jackson statue up there because he deserves it. And, I posted this during the Kentucky Derby. You could see the Churchill Downs lit up from the top of the bleachers, which is pretty amazing.
That is pretty awesome. That looks like walking distance right over there. Fantastic. And then there's the Johnny U statue. Yeah, I mean, they have some great players in their history, and they're one of the schools that I've always said, they were in when I first started watching college football, they were independent, and then they were in Conference USA. This is one they care about their athletics at Louisville. So, like, to me, this is one that could be, now that we have a large playoff, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up being a playoff team and competing for national championships. So, I'm excited.
They played in the ACC championship last year, right?
Last year, yeah. And Jeff Brom's first year, Jeff Brom's a Louisville guy. His dad's a legendary high school coach from Louisville. This is his dream job. So I'm excited about the future in Louisville, Kentucky. I am not excited about this stadium, though. Look, because, dude, just today I went down a rabbit hole. Next up, we're talking Miami Hurricanes, Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens, Florida. It's 37 years old. Seats 64,747. Sometimes I worry that this is like the ACC's downfall, like that they just keep moving to these stadiums. That why, how the Orange Bowl was so great. I follow some account that does like classic movies, Hollywood movies, on social media, and they were talking about Any Given Sunday was filmed at the Orange Bowl, and they were showing the Orange Bowl shots from the set of Any Given Sunday, and I just can't believe they elected to get rid of that to go play an hour away at Hard Rock Stadium. And then I'll get to this. I mean, first off, this is from outside of Hard Rock Stadium, but it just looks weird. It doesn't look like a stadium to me. Does it to you?
No, I mean, so in the beginning of the episode, when I talked about there's certain things that are going to trigger me and you, we've reached that part of the show. Anytime on Twitter you put up, there'll be a tweet will say, name a bigger downgrade. And I'll just put a photo of the Orange Bowl next to Hard Rock Stadium. Or you'll talk about, show the map of how far students have to go to Hard Rock Stadium. You'll talk about the Super Bowls and the national championships that were at the Orange Bowl, the Florida State Miami games in the 90s, beating Nebraska, who should have won national championships. It was a perfect stadium, and similar to Aloha and all these places where there was a dollar figure that was needed to maintain it and get it upkeep, because a dump is going to be a dump if you don't maintain it. But getting rid of one thing is part A. What's your part B? And they didn't have a part B. And so even when you look, you were mentioning going through the rabbit hole online and looking at the old photo. Even Joe Robbie Stadium, before they did this, was a decent looking stadium.
Agreed.
They had the circular ramps. They had, the Florida Marlins play. It was a decent stadium, but what they did, it's like a soccer stadium shade on steroids. And it's this was I think it was a season opener, and that's the crowd there versus, I know it's Miami of Ohio, but they were, until, what the coach's name, I forget what, until the coach messed up that play,
Mario Cristobal.
Yeah. I mean, they were undefeated, top 15 team until he didn't down the ball. And so,
and they're spending a ton of money on NIL, John Ruiz, you would think. I'm sorry.
Champions. So, yeah. So this is one where, people want to say you make too big of a deal of the Orange Bowl being gone. And you can literally point, it's the original sin. It's the original sin. And now what makes it worse is, first of all, I didn't put any notes on this because I knew this was a conversation we had. The only notes that I put in is the Miami Marlins average 12,000 fans per home game. And the Miami Marlins play in Lone Depot Park or Stadium or whatever it is, and it's on the grounds of the Orange Bowl. They're only getting 12,000 seats. So my proposal was, let's put them at Miami Hurricanes baseball stadium, and they could play their home games there. Let's give the land back to Miami Hurricanes and let them do whatever they want and rebuild the stadium there, because when the Orange Bowl is only like 3 miles from the Miami campus, obviously they showed out. It's a special place, and they could redo it. And you can't go back in a major city when Temple's experience it. We're going to get to another stadium that falls in that same category here soon, but this is not what you want for college football. So we love the history of Miami. I mean, growing up, as a kid, what was cooler than Miami football? So we want it back, but it's not going to be back like this.
And let alone that, the classic games, whether it was bowl games, whether it was Super Bowls that were played there, you throw it away for
the
this.
Palm trees in the end zone, I mean,
so unique, and throw it away for this garbage. And I don't even get, if I'm a Dolphins fan, I'm like, this is embarrassing. Now, at least it doesn't have, it's not a dome, but still, it's like halfway to a dome. It's got these crazy shit on top that kind of blocks. What's that, shade, to give you shade? Look, fuck you. If you can't go to a game for 3 hours, you can sit at the beach all day in Miami. Get the hell out of here. All right. Come on, man. This stadium, this drives me crazy. And I can't help but think that some of this has to be directly correlated with the ACC's recent issues. When I think about, their stadiums, there's a few stadiums in this conference that, to me, their move hurts the TV product, which I think has a lot. I think A+B=C, essentially. When you watch a game on TV here, it's empty as fuck. I remember they played Louisville. Louisville was top 15 in the nation to end the season last year. Miami almost beat Louisville at this stadium. Louisville had the crowd. They had the crowd because Miami was, at the time, like 7-5. And that's pathetic to me. You have a top 15 team in town. They've really just butchered this. And it's hard to think that if you would have told me this 25 years ago, I would have thought impossible. I would have said impossible. Miami's one of the biggest football blue bloods since cable TV came around. So, yeah.
Well, I tell you, I can't post these photos on Twitter because, again, it's like the Cal situation. I'm trolling. And when I posted these during opening week on a Friday, I took a video of the team taking the field, and the comments were, do they know the game's on Friday and not Saturday? Do they know that the kick time is there? Did they think they were going to see Miami of Ohio and not Miami, Florida? So all these comments, and none of them positive. So again, national TV opener, night game in Miami. So it's warm, but you're starting at 7:30. You got shade. You have everything. It's also very difficult to park around there. Like, I circled forever. I don't like to pay for parking. I tried to park at a casino. I talked to a guy and he says, if you park your car here, they'll watch you walk through the lot and they'll tow it. So it's unfriendly. It's not unfriendly in the sense of people, but it's just hard to navigate around there. And that's common with NFL stadiums. And we don't want this in college football. So there was a rendering a couple of years ago by John Ruiz was talking about funding. That's not going anywhere. And that's why, it sounds crazy. But there's all this talk about the Tampa Bay Rays moving or getting a new stadium because they can't fill it out. Miami has, I think they average like 18,000 fans a game. The Marlins have 6,000 less. That land is being wasted. So, okay, you can't get an on-campus stadium. Let's look at allocating resources in Miami Marlins. I mean, that is just a wasted space, ruining the history there. So we can go on and on about this, but we are sad for Miami. That's what it comes down to.
And they're a terribly run baseball organization. I don't even know if they'll be there in 20 years.
That's the opening kickoff right there. That's the opening kickoff. And
looks like what? Looks like one of my comedy shows. Look, there's fucking 12 people at this thing. And I see the chat's talking a lot about this. Mike says it was a crazy political play. Supposedly, I think Mike lives down there in South Florida. Moved to build the Marlins Stadium in the same spot and get funding to both. A lot behind the scenes funny business going on.
I'm sure.
That's why the Orange Bowl left. Perhaps, I mean, even crazier was their previous coach, Manny Diaz. His dad was the mayor of Miami. So it's like, I don't know how they fumbled all this, but
again, it's one of those things where, okay, if you're going to make a decision to leave a stadium like San Diego State, okay, they knocked down Qualcomm, but what did they do? They played in a soccer stadium in Carson, California for 2 years. They took it in the teeth and they built a brand new state-of-the-art 35,000 seat stadium on the same spot as Qualcomm. It's expandable to 50,000, and they have something to show for it. But you got people like Hawaii, condemned Aloha Stadium. They have no hope in sight. We're going to talk about Pitt, Temple, Miami, all these places. South Florida is finally maybe getting, after 25 years of a program, maybe they're finally getting an on-campus stadium. So I understand if the finances don't work out and you have to make a move.
UNLV.
But that one is complicated because the Raiders strong-armed them, and anyways, but if you can't get caught with your pants down, and that's what happened. So these guys are in stadium purgatory, and what do you say when you get into some, it took a while to get into it, and it's going to take a while to get out of it. So I mean, look at that. I mean, there's a account, empty seats galore. People, I put that photo up and they tag it and make fun of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a horrible look. Damani in the chat says he DM'd you some stuff when he was on the staff at Vandy. A big shout out to Damani. Was on the staff at Vandy with Derek Mason.
I was actually at that game right there, 2019. That was one I talked about where the Georgia Vandy fans sold their opening game seat to Georgia to pay for the rest of the season, and that place was fourth quarter just barking like dogs, the whole thing. So I was actually at that game.
And a fascinating Cannabis Capper says, don't speak bad about the Ching Complex Center. Bring your membership.
So I will tell you about Ching Complex. First of all, is I was on the news in Hawaii. Everybody knows I love Hawaii with a passion. The issue with Hawaii right now is you can't tailgate there. There's nowhere to tailgate, and you go in the garage and they have security go in there to make sure you don't park by your vehicle. They had a soccer practice field that they were talking about doing a parking lot. They're putting a women's soccer stadium, which a lot of people saying they don't need because they already played at another site. And so we love that place because of where it's situated. But the whole culture of Hawaii football, a lot of it has to do with tailgating, and that's not available there. So they've done wonders with a 4,000 seat track stadium that was never intended to host football. Now it's up to 17,000. They took the scoreboard from Aloha Stadium. They put it on the back of the baseball stadium. So they put great turf there. They host a bowl game. The Hawaii Bowl's there. So they've done wonders. And I love Hawaii and I root for them all the time. But it's the most isolated program in the world. And they haven't had a stadium since 2019. And their new stadium, best case scenario, is 2028. So they're in a tough spot. They're doing the best they can. But again, once you reach stadium purgatory, it's very difficult to get out.
Yeah, 100%. These shots from Hard Rock Stadium. All right, look, folks, if you're listening to us on the audio side, check out the B side. If you're on YouTube, just stay put as we're about to talk NC State and Carter-Finley Stadium on the Stadium Heads podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hop on over to YouTube, youtube.com/@StadiumHeadsSGPN. But stay put. And remember, as always, folks, to let it ride. All right, we are back on the Stadium Heads podcast as we broke down, half the ACC schools essentially, which is 17 now. As we jump over to NC State, if you're carrying, we're going alphabetically. So if you want to hear about Boston College, you want to hear about Cal on Stadium Heads, go listen to the part one of this podcast as we go through all the ACC teams. And if you're a fan of the Big Ten, fan of the SEC, those podcasts are already out. We're going team by team, conference by conference. The chat, Damani is already saying the pussy pack. I'm an ECU fan. That's what we call NC State. But Carter-Finley Stadium, I will say, I am a fan of this stadium. I think it's a good stadium. ECU did beat NC State there, stormed the field, took down their goalpost.
Wow.
And Jimmy Valvano was the athletic director at the time in the 90s. And he made sure that they would never play ECU ever again because of that. Wow. But after Jimmy V, which we all love Jimmy, don't ever give up, right? The greatest speech ever, maybe. I think he was in the wrong there. We can't all be perfect. But later, once the couple, about 10 years later, they had a different athletic director, and we started the rivalry back up. But they helped us. They helped out ECU because ECU had a hurricane, and we had to play the Miami Hurricanes, who were a top 20 team at the time with Larry Coker, and they were rolling. And ECU upset Miami at Carter-Finley because the game was moved, and ECU had David Garrard and everything. But it's got a nice spot in my history. Carter-Finley Stadium, Raleigh, North Carolina, 58 years old, seats 59,918. They did the Carolina Hurricanes hockey game there recently. The Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks of the WFL, the World League, back in the early 90s, played there with Roman Gabriel, who was their head coach. Roman Gabriel's an NC State alum as well. I watched NC State knock off number 1 or number 2 in the nation, Florida State, with Jimbo Fisher here. And I like the stadium, man. I love talking shit to NC State fans, but I like the stadium. I think they do college football well there. What's your thoughts on the stadium?
I agree. I do these historical tweets, as I mentioned, showing the progress of this place. And, the last 25 years has really made a huge difference. In the end zone right there, there's the far end zone. It's called the Murphy Center. At night, it's lit up. It looks really cool. The press box is called the Vaughn Towers, and that was the modernization period between 2001 and 2006. This game, I made a point to go to this game. This was versus Notre Dame last year. It was a noon game, and look at the red. I mean, this was a full crowd. The renovations they did, it used to be open end zone, so now it's fully enclosed. And this was two things. Number one, it rained like hell. I mean, there was a lightning delay for a long time, and people stuck with it. They did not leave, and they gave Notre Dame a good battle. So for me, I've been to a couple of, I want to say either 1 or 2 previous weeknight games. And it was not the same atmosphere, because we know sometimes weeknight games are not going to be the same. But this, I mean, look at this environment here for 56,000 fans. Beautiful. You would never guess that this was built in 1966. So I'm a big, and look how close the bleachers are. There literally is no space around anything.
Like Oklahoma State. Yeah.
So this is and they've really had a good, I looked at it the other day. I want to say over the last 3 years, there's something like 18-4 at home. So they've been dominant there too. So very improved stadium program. They're a great home team. And, when you're in that triangle, if you're a stadium traveler, you can hit this game. I happened to go to, this was at noon. And then at 6 p.m. was North Carolina A&T versus North Carolina Central. It was the 95th Eagle Aggie Classic. So I went to that. But
great
you got
rivalry
Duke
on the FCS ranks, by the way.
Oh, it was an amazing game. But you got Duke, you got North Carolina, you got North Carolina State, you got NCCU, you got Winston-Salem State, you got Wake Forest, you got Campbell, there's so many there. So it's a hotbed of football. And again, they've done wonders with the stadium over, 60 years.
Yeah. And look, they do it right. I'm waiting. And Carolina's, like you said, man, whether it's Gardner-Webb, I know that's further down by Charlotte, but I'm saying they have so many different teams. And then I love this stadium. And I actually was lobbying. Well, I was talking to someone that worked last year, not this year, with the USFL. And I'm saying they should get a pro team and use that stadium, because that's perfect. Raleigh cares about sports. I go to Durham Bulls baseball games. They got a good crowd there. Obviously the movie Bull Durham and everything. They do that. Look, to me, it's a good area for sports, and
they can host a bowl game there too.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing is this year, watch out, man. NC State got Grayson McCall transferring in. They really won the portal. They have a pretty good schedule, I think, there where they missed some big time opponents in the ACC. So you look at Louisville last year; they benefited from not playing Clemson, not playing Florida State. I think it was until the championship game. Maybe that's NC State this year. They can continue to build on this now. they're lucky they don't play East Carolina, of course. But I mean, we'll talk about that on another day. But I think it's a great stadium. I think, and shout out to Mike. I know he's been there. Mike in the chat saying he's been there. You had the lightning delay, 8 miles. Has it always been 8 miles? I want to know a deep dive on that, because I was thinking about this past year. There's been way more lightning delays than like I can recall as a kid. I bet you the requirement before was like 3 miles.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Because there were so many of them. I remember particularly one Saturday where I felt like there was like half the games were affected by this, and my friends were joking, that's why I need a dome, and I'm like, never. Yeah. But I do think they've adjusted that mileage thing, 8 miles there.
What was funny about this delay is they tell us to get out of the stadium because they don't want you in the stadium, and so everybody had ponchos on, and even with ponchos you were soaked. And I hid under some building, and these 3 students, they came over and we were talking, and they knew who, when I said what I did, they knew who I was, and they had one of them opened up their jacket, and it was lined with beers, and we were just drinking like 4 or 5 beers during the delay. So that was cool to, okay, we're hiding from the rain and the lightning, we got to clear out the stadium, but I got free beer and got to hang out with some students. That was pretty cool.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. So shout out to those people if they're listening. And then you got the Wolfpack statue.
One of the best. I mean, like you'll have a tiger and there's one tiger, right? But this is Wolfpack. And you go to Washington, the Huskies, there's one Husky, but this is 25, 30 feet tall, and it's got a waterfall. And before this, right outside, so that Murphy Center, that lit up end zone building, this is right on the other side of that. And before the game, you got to ask people to take your photo, and hey, you take mine, I'll take yours. It's a main attraction outside the stadium.
Hell yeah. Well, let's go right down the road to one of their other rivals besides ECU is the North Carolina Tar Heels. I've been to the stadium too, and this is it's cool. It's right next to the baseball stadium, so that's kind of cool. Right across the street, North Carolina Kenan Memorial Stadium, another memorial. Those are always the classics. Chapel Hill, North Carolina, 98 years old. Seats 50,500. And what game are you at here?
So this was versus Virginia, and they were 7-0 last year, and they got upset. And I went to a noon game somewhere, and it wasn't Presbyterian. I can't think of off the top of my head, and I should, but I went to a noon game somewhere, and this was a night game, and big crowd, best start in years, and they got punked in this game, and it was the fans had a hard time dealing with it. But the views, the sunset going down, I love what they've done with the inside of the stadium. They've leaned into this Carolina blue, and it's so it looks great. This stadium in the 2011, there were 62,000 seats. They removed every single seat that were benches, and they put in individual seats, which were Carolina blue. And now the stadium is 50,500. Well, we all want a lot of spaces, but man, can you imagine in the nosebleeds, you're getting an individual seat. So they've made it's almost like a stage. They've done a great job with the stadium. So
I've never understood why they're not like amazing at football, because like they're good. They're always like solid, I feel like most years, but they are in a state that is that produces decent high school talent. You're right next to Southern Virginia, which Virginia Tech made a run to the national championship and several bowl games with the amount of talent coming out of there. And then your bordering states are South Carolina and Tennessee, and you're not that far from Georgia, and you're North Carolina. And I know Michael Jordan's basketball, but the Jordan brand is Carolina, and you got Lawrence Taylor as one of the best players ever to play football as one of your alums. You got other great players throughout the years, and it's weird. Like I feel like they're a true sleeping giant. I know I just said that about Louisville, and I agree. I would put Carolina even further on that pedestal with the amount of money that comes through there, with the amount of talent that comes through the state. North Carolina produces way more talent than Kentucky does. So, but I don't understand why they just can't knock down that door on that. But man, you want to talk about potential? It's here in Chapel Hill.
Well, and that's why this game, they were so disappointed, undefeated, playing an unranked Virginia, and they knew what was ahead of them, exactly what you're talking about. And I had gone to another game, and so during the COVID year, this is why I sent you this photo. So contrast 2020, you could only go to certain places, and at the time, the governor of North Carolina only allowed 7% capacity, so 50,000 seat stadium. I think there was 1,400 people at this game. It was the only game on my schedule that was a new stadium. I paid $725 damn dollars to go to this game. Yeah. And just because, I'm trying to be on pace.
Well, I don't get.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue.
But it was Sam Howell versus Sam Hartman, Wake Forest. It was like 59 to 53. Yeah.
I won a bunch of money in DFS on this one. I played a DFS.
You need to reimburse me for my $725. Help a brother out here, right? That was one of the best games of the year.
To be fair, during COVID, and I know we both went to Iowa State, Oklahoma State that year.
Yep.
We didn't know each other then, but we were in the same stadium. I paid $500 for that ticket.
Oof.
So yeah, I mean, this is even worse. But COVID.
And what they would do is they would not have any on StubHub, and then they would drop 3. And it's not like, oh, we'll wait it out. It's like if you saw one, you had to grab it. And at the time, I really didn't have like the pull for media credentials or anything. But the reason I sent you this photo is to contrast it with what it looks like on when they're 7-0 and there's no COVID restrictions. So part of my travels is my recent travels is going back and re-experiencing these places the proper way. And again, the Boston College we started off with, you got to find obstructed views. This is a casualty seat where, they add a second deck, and we got a giant metal pipe. I mean, it could be rusted copper. There could be, we might need to do biological testing on this, but it makes for a hell of a photo being able to.
That's great. That's great.
Of the stadium. So
obstructed view down there, Kenan Memorial Stadium, folks. Check it out. youtube.com/@StadiumHeadsSGPN. And then what's this though? I don't know that I recall this.
So this is right outside the stadium. It's the Moorhead Patterson Bell Tower. It was built in 1931. So this particular night, it was lit up pink. I'm not sure. Maybe it was breast cancer. I'm sounding insensitive. But when you go there, it's one of the main photo spots, grad spots, and 1931. It's almost 100 years old. So it's the stadium was built in 1927. So think about being in Chapel Hill in 1932. You got a 24,000 seat stadium, and you got a tall bell tower, and that's about all you got. And you could see the way that it's progressed over the last 100 years.
100%. Next, we go to the
trigger alert.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, I just feel like when I think of Pitt University and the people that were in charge of Pitt University in the late 90s, I play this.
You disloyal fool ass bitch made punk.
From the movie Training Day, but Heinz Field, I'm not calling it acupuncture, whatever the fuck it's called now.
Pittsburgh, a seizure stadium,
whatever it's called. Pittsburgh.
And by the way, on April's Fools, I made fun of the stadium, and somebody that followed me, he said it was a Pitt fan. He replied and he said unfollowed, and that was it.
Like we care. All right.
Because I put out a tweet. Yeah. I put out a tweet with the 4 pro stadiums, and I said, and they were all empty seats, and I said, college football has voted the best 4 stadiums in the country, and here they are. And I put them up there, and I said, April Fools, empty seats galore, trash can emoji, and people didn't like it. So I've learned we're not going to be doing. People can't handle April Fools jokes. Let's just say that. So, but it doesn't. It's true.
Place.
The truth hurts.
It's a sensitive place. Social media.
Well, especially when you got a guy who says, "Go to the stadium. It's great. It's great," and then. You completely flip the switch on these. These are just the enemy stadiums, unfortunately.
And I have been to the stadium, and may I be frank, it sucks. All right, look, it's okay for an NFL game. All right, for an NFL game, it's outdoors. It's right on the water. But knowing what they threw away to play here, it's one of the saddest things I think in the history of college football, in my opinion. I'm going to try to show what I'm referring to here. Let's see what I got. Okay. Do we see that right there? This
the top middle.
Yes. I mean, the things that have happened here. Let me just click on.
the exterior one. Nope, one up.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah,
look at this fucking place. All right, look at this place. And to throw this away, this legendary place, which might I add, that Pitt has had some of the most amazing players in the history of college football. If you follow college football, look, if you were ever to do an all-time team, and the new college football game's coming out, and you just wanted to create, and thank God NCAA college football is coming back for EA Sports. But if you were going to do an all-time team, and you'd say, well, I know Mike's an Ohio State fan. They have a great, if you were to take all their all-time players, they'd be one of the best. USC would be one of the best. Alabama would be one of the best. But surprisingly, somewhere in there, and I think you can go toe-to-toe against every other university, Pitt has produced a shit ton of legends, whether it's Dan Marino, whether it's Darrelle Revis, whether it's Larry Fitzgerald, whether it's Curtis Martin or Tony Dorsett. You can go on and on and on about Mike Ditka played there. Marty Schottenheimer played there.
Aaron Donald.
Yes. I mean, it's a institution of great college football players. And unfortunately, they made the stupid decision, which you can go watch on YouTube. I just watched this game recently that Pitt beats Notre Dame on the final game there. I just can't believe that they decided, let's tear that down to go to essentially this stadium that we're about to talk about here, which, like I said, it's not a bad NFL stadium to me. Like if you're rating that to me NFL stadium, I'm like, it's not one of my top 5, but to me, it's better than a lot of other NFL stadiums. But man, to destroy the gem that you had for this is a big problem because it's not on campus, which means your crowds are weak, just like the game I went to. And it's cool. You have the Allegheny River right there. They fucking Bruce Willis and striking distance, with that boat, you know what I mean? That shitty action movie. But my point is that it hurts me. This one hurts me. I think this hurts me more in a way than the Orange Bowl. How about you?
Yeah. So first of all, you talk about what happened. There was $55 million renovation costs, and they didn't want to do it. And so, they ended up tearing it down. They built a basketball arena there. You're showing the exterior photos, which look cool. You mentioned that all these photos are ones that I've taken. The one from the water, I got on a boat before the game. I met a woman from Bumble, and she took me on the boat, and it was cool, and I got to do that. You see the area is awesome. I mean, North Shore, there's a casino nearby. There's tons of breweries, but nothing about it feels like pro football. I've been to a Steelers game there, and it's pretty cool.
Like college football, you mean? You said pro football.
Yeah, it's for pro football. It feels appropriate for the Steelers, but being off campus this far, they talk about walking up Cardiac Hill, and it was a whole event being there. And again, this talks about when we talked about Bobby Dodd being in a huge city and then having your football stadium right there. That's something you can't go back on. And so these photos, I went to a Thursday night game versus North Carolina. I've been to 3 Pitt games, and all of them have looked like this. And there's a couple of accounts that, I'm friendly with, and I DM'd in like 25 minutes before the game. I sent this, and I'm like, these are the photos that I'm going to be sending out. And so I'm not trying to make fun of the crowd, but what can you do when the entire upper sections are all gone? They want to say the students are out, but this is what it looks like a lot of times. And if it were closer to campus in a classic college football stadium, they would fill it up. And they had a dump, and it became a dump, and it was a dump, and dump. You can fix the dump, but you can't fix this. You can't make this college football. And they're another one that's stuck in stadium purgatory. You said this may hurt more than Miami. Miami had more consequential games played at the Orange Bowl, but this was such a part of, the University of Pittsburgh and the city of Pittsburgh. It still hurts. I mean, this place opened in 2001, and we're still talking about knocking down Pitt Stadium 25 years later.
Yeah, Pittsburgh is, to me, like Miami is a newer city. If you've seen like the Cocaine Cowboys stuff and everything, and that Pittsburgh is like, to me, it's a football town, and to do that, and like it's the history of football. Whereas Miami, I get it. The Hurricanes have built great history, and now there's a chapter in the history of the sport of football with the Miami Hurricanes, I'm sure. But Pittsburgh, to me, like I said, how many great players are from Pennsylvania? People don't realize how many great players are from Pennsylvania. Then you add in the Pitt's history. They do have national championships in their history, and they have legendary players. And they just, to me, they're classic college football. And to do this and to move to this shit venue, it breaks my heart. And especially when I watch games like maybe it's because I watched that Pitt Notre Dame game like 2 weeks ago or a month ago. So I was just like, oh my God, who made this decision? They deserve to never be employed by a university ever again. So I don't know. Here's
a small thing. Look at the end zones. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't even put it in Pitt colors because if the Steelers are playing the next day, you're not going to be able to get it out. So, yes, both teams have yellow in their color scheme, so you can get away with the seats all being yellow, but you can't customize the stadium to, same thing when you go to UNLV. Like I walked around the concessions, all the cups are Raiders cups. They can change out the end zones there because it's turf, but literally everything says Las Vegas Raiders. Nothing says UNLV. And so this is the same. They gave them a little bit of a Panthers thing right in the end zone, but it's not in the darker school colors. And it's not a slap in the face, but it just shows you that it's not your home. It's not your home.
Yeah. Unfortunately. What is this a statue of right here?
I think it was there's Tony Dorsett photo, autograph, painting, and I want to say that's either like a player of the year or maybe an old national championship. But they won the national championship when Dorsett's there. But inside the underneath the bleachers in the concourse, there's a ton of Steelers memorabilia, and there's a little bit Pittsburgh. And I just thought this was a cool display for Tony Dorsett.
Hell yeah, man. LaShawn McCoy, another great. I mean, they just have so many damn good players that came out of there. Tony Saragusa. Folks, all right, before we get to the next school, I want to tell you that the Stadium Heads podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. The NBA Finals are here, and our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting for you. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em games is simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and much, much more. You can make entries of all basketball or mix and match across your favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times the amount of money, and it's a ton of fun. Underdog's available in 30 different states, including California and Texas, and even the great country of Canada. And for people in Florida that just launched their new champions, their player versus player format. So check that out. Sign up today with the promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit, all for up to $250 in bonus cash. Underdog Fantasy, promo code TCESGPN. All right, we are back on the Stadium Heads, and I will say this, man. I was thinking about you add in Cal, SMU, Stanford. I do think the ACC stadiums got better this year, despite how wacky it is that they're like the Conference USA now. They're playing games, the old Conference USA, because even now Conference USA is like more regional than the ACC is. I'm talking about the Conference USA. At one point, they had like Fresno, or they had like a crazy amount of teams. I think Boise.
Well, everybody made fun of Conference USA, and now everybody is emulating Conference USA.
Exactly. This is SMU. We're talking about Gerald J. Ford Stadium, Dallas, Texas. 24 years old, seats 32,000. Look, you showed me this first photo here. When I went through this, I was like, "This is awesome." I like that look.
Yeah. So this. So I've been to 2 games there, both versus TCU. 2018. Weeknight game, rained like hell, 3-hour delay, but I had nowhere to go, so I stuck it out. At the time that I got a video of them throwing a guy down the grass hill, and it was pretty fun. And this was 2022. This was Sonny Dykes coming back to SMU. This place was packed. The issue with this game was it was 11 p.m. I want to say it was week 2. It was one of the hottest games.
Wait, 11 a.m. 11 a.m.
11 a.m.
Yeah.
And they ran out of water in the third quarter. People were having health issues. There's a writer in Dallas. His name is Joseph Hoyt. He saw me post photos. I did a little interview about what it was like on the ground. But the scenes in the stadium were awesome. And, talk about a big sellout crowd, revenge game, all of that. And, this Gerald Ford, first of all, it's not the president Gerald Ford, just for people to make sure that they have that straight. But this was built on the same grounds as their own old stadium. It's called Ownby Stadium. It was from 1926 to 1998. They got this up in 2 years, and they've been playing there since 2000. And so even since this photo, I mentioned earlier that they got a $50 million donation, and they put seats in the bleachers and a big video board. So part of the reason they got identified with the ACC expansion is not just being in Dallas, but having a good stadium that's expandable and an up-and-coming program. So nothing but positive things to say about this stadium.
Yeah, I'm excited for their future. If you dive into the history of the Pony Express, and they have obviously great players from that era, not only that you'll see a statue of it in a second, but like Emmanuel Sanders was with June Jones and stuff, but a bunch of other, Eric Dickerson, Greg James, Michael Carter played for the 49ers.
Recently, Rashee Rice, who won a Super Bowl in his rookie year, go-to receiver for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. And so they've had a bunch, and Bo Levi Mitchell, I think, who's lighting the CFL on fire the past decade. They've had just great culture down there. But if you know the history, like Texas and Texas A&M, I know SMU was cheating, but it was kind of very shady stuff. The death penalty being thrown at SMU under the Ron Meyer, coaching tenure in the 80s. The deeper you do a dive on that, the more corrupt to me it is from Texas and Texas A&M's point of view than it is SMU's. And they wanted to be in the Big 12. The Big 12 wouldn't take them. A lot of politics involved with Texas not wanting them in there, Oklahoma not wanting them in there because they're in fertile recruiting ground, and it's been ugly. So I kind of love seeing them jump up to a P5 level or P4 level, and I'm very excited because I like when they strike fear. And to me, it should be open market. You should be able to do this. You know what I mean? Like, and to me, if anything, the deeper the dive you do, the more Texas and Texas A&M kind of become your enemies from my point of view of like, oh, fuck them. You know what I mean? So I'm excited.
There's 11 FBS schools, 10 or 11 FBS schools in Texas. So you have to split the pie. You can't just have it all the way. So if they're trying to block out SMU, it's out of fear, it sounds like.
Yeah. So I love that. Looks like the goddamn Ice Bowl back in Bart Starr at the 1 yard line against the Cowboys. That was in Green Bay, but this looks awesome.
Yeah, this was interesting because this was this is 2021, the spring, and this is when the FCS was playing their season. I went to a week 0 FCS game at Tarleton State, and on the way out of town, it snowed, and I woke up. I had an 8:00 flight out of the Dallas airport, which is the Love Airport, which is only about 3 miles from SMU Stadium, and it was iced over, and I took a photo. And if you can recall, that is when the power grid went down, and it was out for 2 days. I was on like an 8:00 flight. I sat on the tarmac, and they de-iced it twice. And I got out of there, and then after that, they grounded planes for 2 or 3 days, and people were sleeping on cots in the airport without food. So, but there was enough time for me to sneak in and get this awesome-looking photo in the, frozen over.
Yeah, I remember that because I was stuck in Oklahoma City, also because they got hit with heavy ice too, that they hadn't seen in forever. I was actually like planning to be in Oklahoma City for just like a couple of days. And I ended up, I was supposed to leave and I got stuck there like an extra 2 or 3 days. So, but man, football weather right there. Let's go.
We wish we could kick the ball. Let's go. Yeah.
I know, man. That's just perfect. Look at that. Yeah, the stadium, I'm very excited about the future of SMU and, folks, this right here, Doak Walker, you might've heard of the name. Having him, that's what I'm saying. They have the guys now to put up to me, Dickerson, Doak Walker, like I said, Jerry Ball, Michael Carter, Craig James. They got that. Let's go. Let's get it back to where they should be. All right, let's jump over and talk about the Stanford Cardinals because Stanford Stadium historically, once again, this is why with Cal and Stanford coming, and then I do like SMU's new stadium. I think it strengthens the ACC stadiums. Palo Alto, California, 103 years old, seats 50,424. And I know the knock is Stanford fans haven't been interested in football lately. I don't understand why. Didn't Pop Warner used to coach for Stanford? I believe. I think he did. But
I know he did San Jose State. So
yeah, I think he did. I think he did. But this stadium's gorgeous. And when's the last? I know you haven't been there in 5 years or something, or 6 years. But
this is my first year, and so we've talked about in previous episodes how I feel like my photos have improved. So this is 2017. I'm barely a college football campus tour anything. I'm barely anything. I just got on Twitter in October. This game was in November. When you're traveling, we mentioned that most of the programs are east of Texas. When you're trying to do 2 in 1 day, Stanford, you can only do maybe with San Jose State. If you're trying to do an FCS and FBS at the same time, it's hard to match up. So I just haven't had the opportunity, and they are playing a Friday night opener against TCU. And right now, tentatively, I'm going to go Thursday, Eastern Washington, fly right back to the Bay Area and go to this game. And then we got to figure out, right now it's Butler and Kentucky, but it could be something else. But there's 3 schools I have not been to since 2017, and it's Nevada, Air Force, and Stanford. And they're all Mountain or Western time zone. Boise, 2018, Colorado State, 2018. So last year I was able to get New Mexico and Fresno State and Cal. So it's really difficult. But what's interesting about this stadium is there's two renditions of the stadium. So the one that opened in 1921, they got up to 89,000 seats. It hosted in 1935, 94,000 seats against Illinois, all-time record. We got a comment from Myron that it hosted Super Bowl 19, Dolphins versus the 49ers. At the time, the Niners playing in Palo Alto was the closest to a home team playing at their stadium. But in 2005, they demolished the whole stadium. They rebuilt it back to 50,000 seats. The motivation was to create a more intimate setting, and also, and I'm quoting from the website, and there was a move to possibly host soccer for the 2012 Olympics that San Francisco put a bid in there. So, you talked about the fan representation at Stanford games. Even with 50,000 seats, they haven't been packing it out. So essentially what they did in 2005 was got a modern stadium, more size appropriate for their fan base. And, they have caught lightning in a bottle with Jim Harbaugh, and they've done it. So we'd love to see it again. So this is, I'm talking a lot, but Maine has an opener on Friday, and I've never been there. And it's a temptation to fly from Eastern Washington to Maine and knock out 2 FCS in the first week. But a P4 school I haven't been to since my first year, I feel like I got to go back. And so I will be there August 30th. Yeah. And not only, it's got a great look to it to me, like the tower, like the Coliseum there. Yeah. The look in the front of it. And then even the press box I like. But they also, when they hosted, the 49ers played, I think, a couple games there after the earthquake. I remember that being a thing, right? I remember watching a Niners game. I watch all these old games. I know you do too. We're brother from another mother, essentially. But I was watching some in the 80s or something where they played their regular season games at Stanford Stadium for a couple games after the earthquake during the World Series. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
So not only does it have the history of the Super Bowl, the Niners played there for some games there. So.
And I did send you some other photos. I don't know if you have them, but they were from a spring game that I went to. So you can see more these are more of what I can do now, but you can see how nice the stadium is. They're just
beautiful stadium.
There just happened to be 200 people at the spring game, which was free and sunny and perfect, and no one came. But these are the kind of photos that I'm excited to try and duplicate week 1.
It's a beautiful stadium, man.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, very.
And we talked about Cal being a national championship. This one, the capacity is a little low at 50,000, but Stanford is right by the San Jose airport, Silicon Valley, plenty to do, good weather. So hosted a Super Bowl when it was bigger. So this is another one that get a winning program, expand the stadium a little bit. Maybe it would be a candidate.
Let's go. And what is this right here?
So this is interesting because I take statue photos, and The Stanford used to be the Indians, and a lot of schools aren't the Indians. You know about the Redskins, you know about all that. The stadium was founded, or the school is Stanford, Joseph Stanford, and so on campus is a mausoleum that has his family, his wife Leland and his wife. They're buried there, and so when I did my statue photo, there was a move to try to be the Griffins possibly. That didn't stick. The cardinal is a color. The actual tree is like 150 feet tall. So if you're trying to take a statue photo at Stanford, pick the photo on the right, the Stanford family.
Yeah. Looks pretty cool though, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, where's there a mausoleum on that? They just moved Newt Rockney's remains back to the campus of Notre Dame. So other than that, you're not going to find that many prominent people buried on an actual college campus.
Yeah, 100%. Look, folks, I want to tell you that the Stadium Heads podcast is brought to you by Rhythm. Look, if you're betting on NBA player props, then you need to download Rhythm. That's RITHMM. Rhythm gives you a menu of the best player props for every single NBA playoff game, making it easy to go through and find the best props to put your money on in a matter of seconds. Rhythm predictions are backed by over 3 years of data and a team full of data scientists and quants that focus on fine-tuning their algorithm to give you the best shot at winning. And Rhythm pairs its predictions with player prop graphs that'll help you feel more confident when you see these graphs in your picks, which you can make from wherever you normally place your bets or DFS picks, whatever. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm finds the best player prop lines, all backed by AI data without you needing to endlessly scroll through some sports book. So what do you do it, folks? Claim your free 7-day trial by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. Once again, that's RITHMM. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. Yeah, I mean, Stanford Stadium, back on the Stadium Heads. I like it. I see the potential there. That perhaps, many. I feel like if you mention Stanford on the East Coast, a lot of the fans don't care. It wasn't always like that, though, man. Randy Cross brings it up with UCLA, and he was talking about, former San Francisco 49er Super Bowl champ Randy Cross has been on our show, The College Football Experience, and he said, like, man, he goes, I don't know what happened to that area of the country, but he was like, in the 80s, you go watch like a Stanford game, the thing was packed. You go watch a UCLA game at the Rose Bowl or the Coliseum, that was packed. I don't know. It's crazy that it's I don't know. I under the Harbaugh era, I feel like it was starting to get a little bit, but anyway, let's move along to the next one because it is this one. This is out of all of them, man. This is my number one. I know I said Pitt before over Miami, but this one, you had Archibald Stadium, which is one of like the greatest looking stadiums ever. Syracuse's history with national champions and great players like Ernie Davis and Jim Brown and Larry Zonka and Joe Morris and Art Monk and just so many great players from Syracuse. They won national championship before. Well, then in 1980, they decide I think a couple years before 1980, but 1980, they opened up the Carrier Dome. They decided, I guess in the late 70s, to get rid of Archibald Stadium and go to the Carrier Dome. Yeah, this is my number one most disliked thing because you took away what made you great. Now, yes, you could still have good years, but to me, and especially once we've seen the conference expansion, the fact they play in a conference with all these schools in Florida and California and North Carolina and Atlanta and South Carolina, that your edge is that you're in upstate New York. And I don't want to hear this. It's cold shit. I hear that all the time. Well, the whole CFL plays outdoors. The Buffalo Bills play outdoor right there. Several other universities. Maine plays outdoor. I don't want to hear it. All right. Your excuses are not going to work here. There's a reason why the win percentage is way down ever since you went to the Dome. Now, some of that coaching hires, but I think a lot of it also is you took away a great edge that you have. Sometimes these people just don't realize what the hell they have, in my opinion. Anyway, how many times have you been to the Carrier Dome, man?
I've been there twice. One in I want to say either 2018, 2019. That was Bobby Petrino's last game at Louisville, and they got smoked by Tommy DeVito, I believe. And then this game was 2021. It was a Thursday night game against Clemson. It was after the dome renovation. I do want to go back to Archibald Stadium a little bit. So first of all, the Carrier Dome, which is now the JMA Wireless Dome, it's the only dome on campus FBS Stadium. So 1 out of 134. I did do a little bit of reading because I love Archibald Stadium too. There's a documentary on YouTube. You talk about watching old stuff. It's like the season Syracuse 1979, and it talks about the whole ending and then, the progression towards the new stadium. What I read about Archibald Stadium was that obviously it was lack of upkeep, but there was fire code restrictions that were put on it, and it had to reduce capacity from 40,000 to 26,000. And I don't know what it was because I've heard some similar stuff about Pitt Stadium, but they had to, I'm guessing that they couldn't make it the seating needed even if they wanted to expand it. That being said, could they have built another outdoor stadium or built on the footprint or something? Yeah, that would have been more acceptable. But the Carrier Dome has been renovated several times. And in 2022, they put a new roof on it and permanent. So they made, they call it the Loud House. In peak era, like Donovan McNabb, it's been lit. But us as classic stadium head guys, we want them to play outside. But it sounds like that Archibald could not have existed in the way that it was. Now, it doesn't mean it couldn't have been replaced with another outdoor stadium. So I just wanted to kind of shed light on that.
Okay, fair, but I still think there's always a way. There's always.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah,
I'm just when I saw that they went from like 40 to 26, and it's like if you're trying to be big time, you can't have 26,000 seats. So, but that being said, build another outdoor stadium to code. That's what you would do.
Well, I could tell you this too. If you're trying to be big time and you have a top 10 team coming in, which is this game in Clemson, you got to have a better crowd than that. I mean, look how many empty seats there is. I know it's not Miami bad, but it's still not good. You know what I mean?
I agree. I'm not being, because we're on the same page as far as outdoor stadiums, but there is a space for something that's 45 years old. The Kibbe Dome we talk about in FCS that was built as an outdoor stadium in 1971, and then they put a roof on it a couple of years later. The Holt Arena and the NAU walk-up sky. There is a space in college football for classics. So, or not classic, but a dome stadium. So, in a perfect world, in 1979, they would have done an outdoor stadium. And I know that your stat as far as how they have, not been as good under the dome at all. I hear it, but I guess I'm not going to go and say, hey, you got to tear this down and do an outdoor stadium. I guess this is what they have to work with right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll gladly take the bulldozer to destroy this thing. But I'll say this. To me, like, it's just 101. You're remote. You're in the middle of upstate New York. Your advantage, like, to me, that they didn't have a conversation like this of like, hey, we are at an advantage that almost every other school in America doesn't have. And to remove that advantage, to me, is foolish, because you see it. To me, like you saw, when Clemson went up to South Bend the other year, it was cold as hell on November 5th or something, and they couldn't deal with those conditions. Right? I felt like it was one of the real reasons why they won the game.
Well, why is Montana always in Montana State the best in the FCS? So yes. I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm 100% agree with you. I just, what am I going to do? Kick them for something that they did in 1980? That's
fair. But I just think to me, you have an opportunity. This thing's old now. I know we can protect some great ones, but if you want to get Syracuse football back, I think it starts with a move like that. But
if you want to do deferred maintenance on this place and it happens to need to be replaced in a couple of years, then it wouldn't be the end of the world. I guess what we're trying to say.
Exactly. How about open the thing off, cut the roof off the top?
Yeah.
Obviously some of the great players there, man, and obviously
1959 national championship. So national championship pedigree. Jim Brown at one point was voted the greatest college football player in history. Lacrosse legend Larry Zonka, And, that's what the roof. So when I went in 2018, 2019, the roof didn't look like that. That's what the new interior roof looks like.
Gotcha. And, Fran Brown era, he's bringing in a bunch of Georgia transfers, did the Georgia preview earlier today on the College Football Experience. So check that out. But, they have money. I don't understand in the NIL era. You know how many great broadcasters are from, like when I say great, I say like they're on TV. They make a lot of money. Yeah. Anyway, what were you going to say?
Well, they were the Carrier Dome, and that sounds like an air conditioning company. They didn't even have air conditioning in the dome until 2 years ago. So, there's a lot of issues. But the photos you're showing right there, the great Ernie Davis statue, Heisman Trophy winner, and then they used to be the Orange Men, which again, you change to the orange because of certain things. But that is the Saltine Warrior statue, and it's right in front. I can't remember the library, but it's right in front of the library. You can see the dome in the background. But that's a cool statue. A warrior shooting an arrow straight up in the air. So when you take a photo, that's where you go take your photo at Syracuse, either Ernie Davis or with the Saltine Warrior.
Yeah. So it sounds like to you, out of the three that we don't like, Syracuse is the one you like the most out of those three.
Well, it's on campus.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's the first choice.
That's fair.
Look, it's the historic library, and like 20 feet away is the dome. It just comes down to, what my joke is: the NFL is becoming the CCFL, which is the Controlled Climate Football League. There's 11 teams that play in domes, and there's about 5 or 6 on the way. We don't want that in college football, but that's an NFL problem. So if you have 1 out of 134 FBS, on campus, so that's what it is. In a absolute vacuum, everybody's playing outdoors. It's snowing at every damn game, and we're cold as shit, and our feet hurt and everything, and we're loving it, right? But in this situation, what are you going to do? Something happened 45 years ago. At least they're on campus.
Fair. I do like it on campus.
Yes.
We can meet in the middle there. This stadium, as we jump now to Virginia, shout out to Myron, because he's a big Virginia fan. Scott Stadium, Charlottesville, Virginia, 93 years old, seats 61,500. I'm going to say this one, underrated.
Very.
I really love to look at this stadium. Like, look at this. I don't know when you got to. Is this during the spring? Because
this was just a campus visit between games. Last year I went to a game at JMU. I went to a game at Liberty, and so when you have time, you can either go to a museum or a restaurant, or you can go to football stadiums, and I go to football stadiums.
Look, I was a kid. I remember that Warwick-Dunn game. One of the to me, one of the greatest college football games I've ever seen. Recently, there was a great Notre Dame game where they threw like a last-second touchdown with 5 seconds left to when they were top 10. And I wish Virginia. I love the diamond end zones, might I add, and I love the grass hill that goes up to those columns.
Yep.
I wish Virginia cared a little bit more about football, because I love the stadium. I absolutely love the fucking stadium. And, at one point, this, like, George Welsh had this shit going, man, in the late 80s with Sean Moore, early 90s, Herman Moore, all those guys, Tiki Barber later, and Rondé Barber. But, man, I love this football stadium. And to me, it's crazy. I grew up, in the Washington, D.C. area, so it was only a couple-hour drive, and I actually never went to a Virginia game somehow, some way. So I got to get up there for it, or down there for it. But, I love the stadium.
Yeah, so, it has a view of, they call it Monticello Mountain in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I do want to – do you know what the official name of the stadium is?
I thought Scott Stadium, no?
It's the Carl Smith Center, home of David A. Harrison III Field at Scott Stadium. That's the official name. So, another one that rolls off the tongue. But we'll call it Scott Stadium. But, it started at 22,000 seats, built in 1931. When you look at it, it looks like, the second deck got added. That's where they doubled the capacity. Record crowd, 2008 against USC, 64,947 fans. I've been to one game there, and I want to say it might have been the biggest game in 25 years. It was the 2019 Commonwealth Cup game against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech had won like 15 straight games over their rival, and this game they actually won, and we rushed the field, and this was part of a triple header. I went to the Egg Bowl in Mississippi, and then I made a noon kickoff in Virginia, and then I got the 100 Miles of Hate Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee State the next day. But this, you saw the first photo, the one previous where I'm on the field taking the photo, and then I ran up the bleachers and took this photo. And, you know, I mean, look at the mass of humanity, and probably 80% of the people are still in the
Stands,
bleachers. So this is one that, you know, I got one shot at it, and it was the best game that you could possibly go to. I want to say week 2, I think they have an 8 p.m. game, and Hampton has a 2 p.m. game. I've been trying to hit. I've already done Norfolk State. I've done William and Mary, but I need Richmond. I need Hampton. There's Old Dominion out there. So I'm looking for a way to double up. And if I could get to Virginia this year, I want to go back, because the last one was 2019.
Yeah, I mean, this stadium's great. I mean, I don't care how long. I mean, even the that big of a title is ridiculous. I mean, I got every person. I don't care how smart you are down there in Charlottesville. You learn that, you're sitting there saying, "The fuck is that?" But shout out to Damani, who says kids don't want to go to class these days. But yeah, Commonwealth Cup and an education from the University of Virginia, always a thing that can help you out in life. Virginia Tech next, Lane Stadium. My first ever Thursday night game was at Virginia Tech before I went to ECU. I went to a West Virginia. Shout out to my basketball coach who took me to a bus from Washington, D.C. down to Blacksburg, Virginia, with a take on West Virginia when that Rich Rod had West Virginia rolling. Awesome game. Came up to a goal line stands on a Thursday night. But after that, man, I was like, this is college football. I mean, I was already convinced college football is the greatest. But after I had that stadium experience on a Thursday night, goal line stand by West Virginia, quite the game.
Awesome.
Lane Stadium, 59 years old, 65,635 people it fits. And man, and I know they've done updates since then, you know, of the stadium, but man, to me, the atmosphere, the environment, this is college football. It's one of my favorite stadiums in general. What do you make of this stadium, and how many times have you been?
So it's my favorite ACC stadium. You know, I just throw it out. I love, you know, some of the others, Clemson but this one, you know, you mentioned the upgrades. For a long time, it was just that home bleacher and the road bleacher. And then over the years, they put in the end zones. They put in that giant tower there. They really, you know, it doesn't make that bowl. You know, it kind of gives like BYU vibes a little bit, Lavelle Edwards Stadium. But, you know, at one point in the early 2000s, it was voted by, you know, ESPN and Sports Illustrated as the best home field environment. This game was 2021. The first game back from COVID, playing Sam Howell in top 10, North Carolina, and they held them, I want to say, to under like 14 points, and they won, and they rushed the field, and I did that whole thing. But this place is electric. Even walking around on campus on non-game days, you're going to love it. So I'm a huge fan. Their all-time record, 242, 97, and 6 at home. And look at that. I mean, that's what you want. You want to get to the top of the stadium. You see the roadside, how far it goes up. I mean, it's very unique. We mentioned Clemson being high. So one of the coolest stadium has grown with the program. They used to play a lot of their big games at neutral site. I want to say there was one in Roanoke. So this stadium, it solved a lot of problems, and it made it one of the bucket lists, if not the bucket list in the ACC stadium-wise.
And that's the basketball stadium right behind there, folks, if you're wondering. And yeah, they're, as a university, their athletic department has just come up so much. When I first started watching college football, you know, the stadium looked nothing like this in the late 80s. And also, you know, the basketball stadium, they were in the Atlantic 10 back then. Their football program wasn't the Big East, but Frank Beamer got this thing started up. You know, I know they had some history before they were in probation, a little bit before that when they had Bruce Smith and stuff, but just a great stadium, man. This is college football done right. Take notes, Syracuse. But anyway.
Well, there also is a Thursday night game coming up, and I'm trying to do, I want to say, I can't remember the date, but I want to say it's New Mexico State Tuesday, UTEP Wednesday, Virginia Tech Thursday and maybe like Arizona State Friday.
Against Boston College, I believe.
Yeah. So that's the one I want to go to. It's going to, logistic wise, it's not going to be easy to go from El Paso to Blacksburg back to Phoenix, but this is what we do. You want to do it. And, I've said this on the show a few times, when you get a P5 on a weekday, you got to go. So yes, you want to see it, perfect conditions, but man, that Thursday night game against, or is a Friday night game against North Carolina, that was a sellout. So you can get a good crowd on a weekend or a weekday, even on a weekday.
Hell yeah. Gotta love what the Hokies do. Look at that thing, man. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful stadium.
And you see the little Carolina blue. That's all they could get in there. Put them in the top corner. Otherwise, it's all Virginia Tech.
100%, man. Look, folks, before we get to our final team, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, I want to tell you folks out there that, we are listening to the Sports Gambling Podcast Network and the Stadium Heads podcast. Make sure you subscribe to Stadium Heads wherever podcasts can be found. And please, if you can, hop over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. And also, I think this show is great from the audio point of view, but from the visual point of view, it's even better in my opinion. So if you get a chance, hop on over to YouTube, type in youtube.com/@ Stadium Heads SGPN, and you will get our page. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button, because I think you'll be very pleased with the work that we do and what we have coming, as Michael obviously is about to embark in quite the journey of 90 plus stadiums this upcoming year. So we're going to have you covered. Talk college football. We love college football. We show you college football we think done right. So check out the Stadium Heads podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. All right, we are back and we are talking Wake Forest Grove. I'm going to call this Grove Stadium. Right? You see what I did there. I'm not doing it, dude. Grove Stadium, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 56 years old, seats 31,500. Dave Clawson's done a great job getting the program. I know they've had a couple tough years, but man, he had it rolling for a little bit. Jim Grobe also had it going. Played for an ACC championship in the mid 2000s there. But look, this is one where it's tough because I love what they do. But when your enrollment's only like 2,000 people, it's always going to be hard to sell out a stadium like this when you have such a low enrollment. But hey, I like the stadium. I think it's also gotten better throughout the years. As a kid growing up in the DC area, you'd watch a lot of games on Jefferson Pilot Sports with their ACC contract. And this place looked a lot worse 20 years ago, 30 years ago, in my opinion. So it has gotten a lot better. Your thoughts on this stadium, my friend?
Yeah, so I agree with you. It's one of the smallest P4, whatever we want to call it, stadiums that we have. It started, it's been like 31,000. The trivia of what's its actual name is a Legacy Federal Credit Union Stadium. And, I feel like at this point, I know stadiums, and I could probably rattle off the capacity in the year built for a lot of them. This one I had to actually look up the name because it was BB&T and Truist and all that. So Groves is good with me. But what's cool about this place is, you got what's called Deacon Hill, is the grass where the fans could fill it up. Bigger the game, the more people are going to go. On the opposite end zone is Bridger Fieldhouse. So there are some modern amenities you can check out. The press box looks cool. And again, when we talked earlier about NC State being proximate to everything, this is a football heaven down there. And this is when I saw in the intro, 3 games in one day. Gardner-Webb, 11 o'clock versus North Carolina A&T, 3:30 Charlotte, and then 8 o'clock Syracuse and Wake Forest. So, even a guy who's been traveling for 8 years now to get that accomplishment in was cool. But this is a good place to watch football. A lot of easy to navigate the stadium, and squeezing every drop out of it based on their enrollment and available funds. So, and big time basketball. So it's nice that they're somewhat living up to the same thing in football.
Now, one of the things they have to do, they've gotten a lot more success over the past 20 years than when I was growing up, when they had Rusty LaRue and Mike Elkins and stuff. They were not very good at football. They've gotten a lot better in recent years. Like I said, past 20 years, they've had some really good years. But I would love for them to go back to grass. They were playing at grass for so long, and this is another one. Remember we were talking Rutgers on the Big Ten, where like when you watch a game,
Shiny.
something about the stadium, like the field, it looks bad to me. It looks bad. Like they got to go back to grass. I don't understand how NC State and Duke can play with grass, and then you look at a game here and it looks worse to me.
I agree.
It's not that more expensive. It's actually safer for your players. I've never understood this move of, player safety in the NFL or college football. And, like you said earlier with the NFL, they're playing in more domes where they have this artificial grass where it doesn't take, there's millions of doctors you can ask. They say, oh, it's way worse. Your chance of injury goes up like some crazy number. So if you really cared about player safety, I think you try to get less, more games on grass. It's a little bit more expensive to keep up with, but come on. I would like to see
the climate is appropriate down there. It's not like it's, North Dakota or something like that.
100%. But I still think they've done a good job making this thing. I dig that too.
Yeah. I mean, that's a cool view right there. Just get a blanket
great shot.
You need a berm seat. So you get one and they got people at a rope and they let you in, and, you could just ask somebody if you can take a photo of their ticket and then you can go in there. But a cool little spot to, even if you have a ticket, just go, pop a squat for a few minutes.
Hell yeah. So, and then what do we have here? Obstructed view.
So when you renovate, you got to make sure you dot all your I's and cross all your T's. And they built a little outdoor suite. And, based on my experience, it's hard to watch a football game through a brick wall. And this is what we call, let's call this 28%. There's about 28% view here. So you gotta take a photo. And this is actually on the back cover of my calendar where, we talk about essentially, for the history of college football, we always highlight seats that are the best of the stadium. No one has ever highlighted these obstructed views. In this calendar, you will find 12 of the most bucket list college football obstructed view seats that you could find, So this is, you scout the stadium, you find a friendly fan. I think the account Wake the Badgers, this guy, he's a Wake Forest and a Wisconsin fan. I met him at the game and he helped me with this photo, but you notice no one's sitting there. This is during the game. There's a reason why, but you can see behind me, there's a 29, there's a seat number. It's a seat. So if you go to Groves, Federal, whatever, make sure you go plop yourself down there and take a photo.
100% again. I mean, this is one where I feel like I wonder if they're ever going to try to get a bigger enrollment. I always wonder that. Certain universities, you look historically, at one point they were super small, and you wonder, because North Carolina is a growing state. So you always wonder if maybe that can happen. I know their academics, they care about them. I recently listened to their athletic director speak about this. So I mean, and they should, but
there's a lot of there's a correlation between success in athletics and the increase in applications. So you go on a run and you see these teams in March Madness go to Sweet 16, Elite 8. There's a direct correlation between that. So hopefully they can.
Well, yeah, I agree. And Steve Forbes doing a good job in basketball as well. Dave Clawson. I think there's a lot of, reason to be optimistic if you're a Demon Deacons fan. So, and that concludes, although we had that statue, by the way, that statue is fire.
Love it. Demon Deacon looking like the angry, almost Monopoly guy a little bit. But, this is right behind the press tower right there. And if you're trying to get a photo during the game, I mean, there's tons of people there, but this is like Demon Deacon, right? So when we talked earlier about Duke not having a devil statue, okay, you don't want to go. This, you can make it intimidating, and this is just cool as hell. It's one of my top 5 favorite statues on an FBS campus.
Love it. And that, folks, concludes our ACC 17-team breakdown. Now, I did make a list of the 5 that, I guess my number 1 might have disappeared somehow when I hit delete, but my number 1 I put as Clemson, 2 Lane, 3 Wallace Wade, 4 Scott Stadium, 5 Doak Campbell. But I got to admit, I did this on my flight last week back here, and I completely forgot about Stanford, Cal, and SMU. So if I add those to the mix, I think Cal makes my top 5. I think Cal would probably be. It'd probably be number 3 to me. I think I love Memorial Stadium, so I think I would go Clemson 1, Virginia Tech 2, Cal 3. And look, do you have 5? I'm not going to ask you to rank them. Do you have 5 though that just stand out to you?
Well, it's funny because I prepped for like everything on this show, and then I don't rank a top 5. So that just shows. I mentioned Lane Stadium is number 1. So if you're going to say who's in my top 5, I'm going to say Lane. I'm going to say Doak. I'm going to say Clemson. I want to say Cal, and I'm going to say Bobby Dodd. Those are going to be my top 5. Bobby Dodd is awesome too, man. It's tough, but Wallace, Wade, and Scott are so underrated to me. I just feel like maybe I'm overrating them, but at the same time, I dig them. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Scott Stadium, that the columns in that end zone are really cool. The view of the mountains, there's just something about Bobby Dodd and just being in Midtown Atlanta. There's just something about it. I love that. Cal jumping in there is automatically in the top 5. And for a long time, Doak, Lane, and Clemson, that's the argument. Those are the 3 there. So that would be my 5. But there's realistically probably 8 or 9 that could be in the top 5. Well, especially like I said, they added 3 good stadiums. So we'll see in the coming years. I can't wait to bring it to you folks. And look, this is our show. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/@StadiumHeadsSGPN. And make sure you follow Michael at CFB Campus Tour because like I said, I consider myself kind of like the salt and pepper on the meal. Like the meal is Michael goes to these are all his photos minus the library scene in Tallahassee. These are all his photos, and he goes there. He goes to all these spots. He gets boots on the ground, and we share the same love for college football and stadiums. But he does a lot of it, and he's going to be out on the tour this season. So, if you want him to come to your town, let him know at CFB Campus Tour. Give him a follow. Tell him, because and another thing is if you're brand new and you've never seen his schedule in the fall, you're gonna be fucking blown away by it. And we're gonna come to you every single week during the fall, even through Michael's travels. So please, if you can, give him a follow on Twitter at CFB Campus Tour. We got some other stuff we're gonna do as we get closer to the season. But yes, do that, and give me a follow on Twitter at @TheColbyD. I host the College Football Experience. We're breaking down all 134 college football teams. We'll give the same amount of attention to Kennesaw State that we do for Florida State or Alabama or whoever. So check us out. We've just started doing the previews. We dropped Alabama, Georgia, and Auburn today. So check them all out. And, we got to come in. Also check out the FCS College Football Experience and Sports Gambling Podcast Network. So check it all out, folks. College Basketball Experience, College Baseball Experience, thriving right now. Shout out to Noah Beanick, doing great work. Until next time, folks, this is the Stadium Heads Podcast. You better start thinking about yours. And we are out of here.
Something new coming. One thing that can be done in education. More education is more informed. That's the way it is in everything. The young man ask me advice, and I always tell them, get as much knowledge as you can.
Stadium Heads, man.
The granddaddy of them all, the famed Rose Bowl, jammed with the color of over 100,000 fans for its 67th renewal.
And the weather here today at Notre Dame Stadium, in a word, it is cold, but it is football weather. The temperature 37 degrees, humidity 79%. Forecast cloudy for light rain later on this afternoon.
The average person doesn't know what a good stadium is. They might think they know what a good stadium is, but they think just, our seats are nice and it's so comfortable. We have a 10,000-inch screen we can watch the replay on while we're watching the game, and we got a waiter coming over to take our orders. right? And there's 20 million bathrooms close to us. That's not what makes a good stadium. A good stadium is the look of it, the feel of it, the history of it, the soul of it. That's what makes a good stadium. That's what I mean when I say we're stadium heads. We are stadium heads.
They get to run around. Now, those people, they shouldn't even be there. That doesn't even count. If you can't get out in the elements, you shouldn't even go to the game. That's the worst thing. Those darn boxes up there and Doak Stadium and stuff. We don't need that, right?
Welcome to sunny El Paso, the 52nd Sun Bowl, and now
This ancient facility is one of the great settings in all of college football. Leland is now in its 86th